All right, everyone. We are back with you on a Saturday morning. It's kind of an interesting morning. I don't know if it knows what it wants to do outside today, but at least it's not cold anymore. So that's nice. We're blessed to have a guest this morning again. It's a guest. How long ago was it that we last had you, Kevin? This is Kevin Adams back, by the way, attorney at law. Defense attorney at that. And we're glad to have him back. He's always good to have some great information. And he's going to be speaking to us about his new book that he has entitled Falsely Accused, or Even If You Did It. That's the that's the catchy one. You know, do you notice any similarities in these two books? These are destined to be bestsellers.
There you go.
Or best givers, best givers, best free books. But anyway, I did notice that we yours is more red than black, mine is more black than red. But that's of course because I'm black and you're kind of red. But anyway,
I think what I think of when I see that headline. Bart Simpson said, "I didn't do it. Nobody saw me do it. You can't prove anything."
No, but seriously. This is a very, very good book, and we're going to get a little bit into the motivation and some of the things he discusses on. But anyway, Kevin, hey, thank you so much for coming back in, and thank you for sending me this book to look at. And you begin the book by dealing with the founding of our nation and what it was founded upon, essentially the right of every individual in America to representation, and basically the premise of innocence until proven guilty, but mainly the right to representation and a trial by jury. And I like that. I want to. This really stood out for me, and it says, for criminal defendant, the right to trial by jury is among the most valuable constitutional rights that we have, and is part of the protection of the doctrine of the separation of powers in the United States Constitution. The right to a trial by jury separates the power to bring criminals to justice in America. In the American justice system, the jurors are the finders of fact. And the right to trial by jury protects people from the awesome power of the government. So that is so good, because I know prior to the U.S. being established in Europe and in most other places, you went in front of some judges, and the judge basically sent him off with his head, or off to a debtor's prison. Or in fact, I've talked to the people before about this show Poldark that my wife, it was a PBS, one of these PBS Hallmark movies, or it was a series, and one of my favorites. It was just a wonderful series. But anyway, they would get these people, the poor, and if they offended what they called the betters, your betters, and if the rich, basically, if the rich didn't like someone, they want to get rid of them, they would just go to a judge, send them off to debtors, or if you owed them someone, they sent off to debtors prison, debtors jail, and the judge could just determine, off to prison with you. You had no jury, no right to a fair trial. And that's honestly what it was like. And it would have been that way here in America had we not fought a revolution and won and set up our own political system. So anyway, having said that, to me, that the book centers basically around that whole premise. But why don't you tell us, first of all, what inspired you to write this?
Oh, goodness sakes.
Oh, it might help if you had a microphone.
Here we go. You're on the court.
Oh, good. This is good.
Yeah.
Another first.
Welcome to the pre-show, folks.
Yeah.
We are just about to go live here in a couple of minutes.
Seconds, I hope. You've just witnessed another first.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
All right.
All right. We're back to the show.
Well, I mean, I've thought about writing a book for years. And I've written things for years. I write things on my website and I'm trying to explain to my clients how the system actually works. And so it just, seemed like a natural extension to gather up these things that I've been talking about, for the last 25 years and to put it in a book. The first thing I wrote was a pamphlet that I had actually printed up, a trifold pamphlet. It was called 10 Things Everybody Suspected of a Crime Should Know. And I would take this and I would give it out. To my clients in the jail, and I give them a couple extra and they'd pass it around.
Nice.
And then when I got a website, I put that on the website. And then years later, I Googled it. I was working my website and I Googled it and it popped up on another lawyer's website. The lawyer had just taken it and put it on his website. And so I submitted something to Google and they took it off. But anyway, that was the thing. I mean, so much of the time I spend so much time trying to explain to people how the system actually works because their view of the way the system works is not actually the way the system works. And, and honestly, some of the people that are the most difficult to explain it to are the people that have never been in trouble before.
Yes.
I mean, they've lived a nice middle class life. They don't get in trouble. Their son gets in trouble. And then it's like they can't understand or they can't believe that this system actually works this way, and you start trying to explain it to them. And some of them look at you like you're an idiot, like this guy can't be telling us right. This system cannot be working the way that they say that it does. So that was really the thing. And I put it in the beginning, the first chapter, I just talk about it, in the introduction, that I wrote this for my clients and my clients' families to educate them.
And then, so because the book kind of evolves and the ending is a lot different from the beginning of the book, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But so how did the pieces come together? As you said, the beginning began as a pamphlet, but then how did it build? How did you end up building the pieces?
I mean, the first issue when I talk about in the second chapter, well, let me just start in the first chapter in the introduction. I give a little bit of what my experience is so people know that, I have the experience, something they could listen to. But then I address an issue that kind of, I guess is a pet peeve of mine, is that the general public and a lot of people will look at me and those like me, as if that we're obstructionists and that we're stopping the criminal justice system from working the way that it's supposed to work. But those people are wrong.
Sure they are.
Okay. Because I'm in the United States Constitution. You know what I'm saying? I'm in the Sixth Amendment. Hey, your local prosecutors, your local judges, your local police officers, they're not in the Constitution. I'm in the Constitution. And that jury is in the Constitution, And our system is supposed to have barriers. Defense attorneys are supposed to stand between their client and the angry mob. They're supposed to stand between their client and the criminal justice system. So that was the first thing I just kind of wanted to address, which I did. But then the next biggest hurdle that you get with a lot of people is that people get so wrapped up focusing on the flaws of the criminal justice system and attacking people, not everybody, but some people, and attacking people within the system that they don't, it's counterproductive. And so I just felt like I don't want to be negative, and there's a lot of negative things I could have said that I didn't say, but I just wanted to get the people to this idea that, look, if you find yourself in the criminal justice system, yes, it is in fact a flawed system. It's a flawed system for the same reason that we need a criminal justice system to begin with, is because people are flawed. It's the sin nature of man. We're flawed. But if you focus on how the system is supposed to work, then you have a much better likelihood of receiving a good outcome or a positive outcome than you do if you focus on the flaws.
I'd like to ask you this. Rush Limbaugh, whom a lot of people don't realize how much of a pedigree in law he has. His father, his grandfather, in fact, I think his grandfather, uncles were on the Missouri Supreme Court. He said it this way, and I really want to get your reaction to it. He said, when we set up our criminal justice system, it was with the mindset we'd rather see 5 innocent men or guilty men go free than an innocent man get convicted. What do you think? Or am I wrong on that quote? I don't know.
No, the quote actually comes from, and I think it's 100 guilty men versus 1 innocent man, could be 10, but
Okay.
And it comes from one of the founding fathers, which I ought to be able
Maybe
to,
the Federalist
Yeah,
Papers or
I
something.
mean, I probably ought to be able to tell you where it comes from, but it does come from it does come from one of the founding
So you've
fathers.
heard that several
Yeah.
times before.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. That's a question that sometimes I'll ask in jury selection.
Oh,
Okay, not quite that way, but it comes from that statement is which is a greater injustice for a guilty man to go free or for an innocent man to be convicted?
that'll tell you who they are. Yeah.
Well, because they're supposed to be deciding this beyond a reasonable doubt.
Exactly.
Okay. And if a person tells me that they're equal injustices, then in my mind, that person is going to apply a preponderance of the evidence standard, which is a civil standard, instead of realizing just how serious it is when the government takes away one of the freedom of one of the citizens. So, but that I crafted that question based on the whole.
Okay.
It's better to let
So,
some
go
people
ahead.
go for it.
How difficult is it?
Eddie, turn your mic on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah. How difficult is it for you as a defense attorney? Because I've often, we've seen it in movies where you have the defense attorney because it is your duty, it is your calling, and you may know that the person is guilty of something. But even as it says here, falsely accused, or even if you did it, you still have a duty to defend that person. And so, and it's hard for us sometimes to understand, let's say, a child rapist or someone murder or mass murder or someone, that they get this defense attorney when we would like to just take them out and chop their head off or whatever. The firing squad is too good for them or whatever. But how hard is it for you, especially as a believer? Maybe it's easier as a believer because you believe in ultimate forgiveness or an ultimate reconciliation. But how difficult is that sometimes for you when you go home and now you're defending someone that in your heart either did it or probably did it, and you're here defending this person against someone prosecuting their case?
Yeah. I would say this. Our system is set up to have a jury of 12. If I start making the decision, I know the person's guilty, therefore I'm not going to represent them, then they have a jury of 1. Okay. And that's not the way the system is supposed to be set up. The other thing is, and I talk about this in the book in several contexts, several different contexts. Look, when you call somebody a bad guy, what you're actually saying, it's a comparison. You're saying, I'm good.
Yeah.
And he's bad. And if I'm good and he's bad, then whatever I can do to him is justifiable in my mind. And that's, part of and that's human nature. Okay. To be judgmental like that. I think the Bible refers to it as
It's not a virtue though.
Yeah. Bible refers to it as being a respecter of persons, but that we treat differently based upon our assessment. But I mean, look, sometimes some clients are more difficult to represent than others. Okay. I've represented people that were guilty of murder. I knew they were guilty of murder. And I knew they were guilty while I was walking them in the process of walking them out the courtroom. And I knew that the state wasn't strong enough to stop me. Okay. But that's my job, is if you can't prove their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt to every element of every offense, they're supposed to go home. They're supposed to go free.
Okay, as believers, we know God is the ultimate judge, and they won't escape that.
Yeah.
We know that human judgment is going to be flawed.
Yeah. Well, Moses was a murderer. King David had a man killed to cover up the affair
He's a
that he
murderer
had with
too.
his wife.
Yeah.
Okay. Paul cut a guy's ear off. We call that assault and battery with a deadly weapon. So, God uses broken people.
Yeah.
And so I'm not, sometimes, typically the people that are more, especially if you got a guy that's like, is remorseful, okay, it's a lot easier to represent that guy or that lady than if you got a guy that, continues to think that they know more about the case than you and wants to tell you how to do everything. You got to like your client on some level, or it will come across to the jury, and I can think of one client in particular that, sometimes you got to find something to like about them.
Yeah.
And I'm finally this one guy, I just decided what I really like about him is he's a really good criminal and he tries the best he can be to be a criminal. If you're going to do something, you might as well excel at it. You know what I'm saying? And this guy really, really excelled at it. But at least he's given it his all.
A couple of Billy Graham's associates were talking, they were waiting for him to get in the car after Crusade. And they're saying, Billy Graham, he could find something nice to say about anyone. I bet he could find something nice to say about the devil. So Billy gets in the car with them and they tell him. And they say, well, can you say something nice about the devil? And Billy Graham looks at him and says, he does his job.
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten to the point of turning down a case that you felt that you just can't in good conscience take that case? Have you ever gotten to that point?
I turn down cases all the time. I take a fraction of cases that people try to hire me on. And some people get really irritated. Well, what do you mean? You're saying, no, I'm not taking your case. It's not a case that I want. But generally it's because I'm not on the same page as the person.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll ask them, what do you hope that I can do for you?
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that what they're hoping that I can accomplish I think there is a legal pathway to get there. And if not, I shouldn't be on the case. If they have unrealistic expectations or whatever like that, because you're just causing yourself problems.
Yeah. If you can't do your best, don't do it.
Right.
And then there was a murder case, but this may be more along the lines of what you were asking. Years ago, I told a judge in Tulsa that I would take a court-appointed case, and it was a death penalty case. And another lawyer who's now a prosecutor, actually, wanted me to work on the case with them. And I got the discovery, and I started reading the discovery, and it discussed how his grandmother had discovered her granddaughter that had been murdered. She was holding her in the hands and their arms when the IMSA people arrived. And I called the judge back up and said, hey, look, I know I told you I was going to take this case, but I'm not.
Yeah, the conscience.
Well, it's conscience. But it's not just a conscience, because I have a very strong conscience. The thing is look, these cases damaged the lawyers.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of prosecutors, I think it does damage to them just as a lot of officers. Now, I think what might do prosecutors more damage is that they're so judgmental. I think that's damaging to you. But the thing is look, I wasn't in a place where I felt like I could deal. I don't want to see those images in my mind. I don't want to see those pictures. I don't want to live with that on and on. You take a case, whether it's an appeal, whether it's a trial or something like that, I'm waking up in the middle of the night thinking about the case. It's just always going on. It's always going on in your mind. And it's like a fighter, like a boxer or something, they take a piece of you, and at some point, I've known defense attorneys that, one that was a federal public defender told me one time, he goes, yeah, I hit the wall about 5 years ago. He just got to the point where he just couldn't do it anymore.
So I believe we ought to term limit our DAs, because every day they're dealing with the worst among us. And I think long term, it takes a toll on their view of humanity.
Yeah.
I really think so. And I start seeing them picking on the poor who can't afford justice.
Yeah.
And, if you're up against an O.J. Simpson trial with 14 of the top lawyers, you're going to, one judge is sitting in her chamber. She says, yeah, and misdemeanors, we stack them deep and settle them cheap. But the felonies, they treat differently. And I just like, should there be a distinction?
Yeah, I don't know that I want the government stepping in and telling somebody when they can or cannot do it. Frankly, I'd rather deal with an old prosecutor than a young one.
That's a good point too.
Because they get, they get a little bit more reflection over the years and stuff. And most older prosecutors are a little easier, or quite a bit easier to deal with. I remember what a jerk I was when I got out of law school, as a defense attorney. And a lot of the prosecutors are, when you get a young prosecutor, they're really excited about being a prosecutor, and they're really ready to, to show everybody who they are, and they can be a little more unreasonable.
Can attorneys do both? I don't think some attorneys can do one. They're either going to be good at one or the other.
There are some that can do.
Gary Richardson, you and I both know.
Yeah, Gary Richardson. He was appointed by Reagan, United States Attorney for the Eastern District, and his son Chuck was prosecutor for Tulsa County. To me, it turns on whether or not they're actually a trial lawyer. Okay. A lot of the prosecutors aren't actually trial lawyers. The most important characteristic of a trial lawyer is the ability to see things from different perspectives, to predict with a reasonable degree of certainty how people from different points of view are going to feel about a particular set of facts. Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they have a role, and it's, they see it this way, and they're just going to push that role, but they can't really predict how other people are going to feel about it. And if you can't do that, you're not a trial lawyer. And so there are some prosecutors who can make that, cross, but I would say most of them probably can. Yeah. Most of them I would classify as litigators.
Yeah.
The last about 10 pages, I guess, of the book, it's funny how the book begins and goes through this whole process. Then all of a sudden, in the last 10 pages or so, it almost turns into a Bible study.
Yeah.
And it's really quite interesting. And it's almost as though, I think you told us off air before we went on, that this is intended somewhat to give to clients or prospective clients or people even in prison. Yeah. To help them know what their rights are and what things to do and so forth. But it's almost like a witnessing tool as well. Yeah. Why don't you share some of the things like that caused you, first of all, what caused you to do that at the end, and why you would add that to, because when you first start, it's this kind of wonky dealing with history and the law, and it's important, the Constitution, and then all of a sudden, boom, it turns into a Bible study kind of.
Well, most of the guys in Oklahoma, as in most states, you're only entitled to an attorney on appeal, on direct appeal, your first appeal. You're not entitled after that in post-conviction. You're not entitled to federal habeas. Federal habeas is very complicated. You can only get the federal government to step in and fix a case, okay, if it is they make a determination that the court ignored clearly established law as established by the United States Supreme Court. Okay, it has to be a federal issue, can't be a state issue. The feds are not going to interpret state law for the state. Okay, yes. This is a separation of powers issue.
A good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing. And the other thing, or they have a reasonable determination of facts based upon the evidence presented. Okay. And that's what you call federal habeas 2254, state prisoner challenging the conviction in federal court. Now, that's the presumption if the state court addressed it properly. There's a lot of guys that have a lot of good issues, okay, that if they could get it into federal court under a decent and present it decently and preserve their record and preserve their issue, that they would, the feds would appoint them a lawyer. You know, I mean, there's been two death penalty cases from Oklahoma reversed this year. It's only April, or it's almost April. Okay, by the United States Supreme Court.
Wow.
And both of them went through the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals twice. There was a guy that I was doing a case. I won't go into the details, but I was working on a case, and one of the newspaper guys told me about this guy that had pled guilty to something that wasn't against the law, according to some unpublished opinions I'd come across. And I went down to the jail and told the guy and gave him these two cases. Like, look, this here says, you know, that what you pled guilty to wasn't a crime. And so the guy tried to withdraw his plea, denied, appealed to the Court of Criminal Appeals, denied, appealed to federal court and the local federal court, denied, went to the 10th Circuit and they granted it. And he did it himself. Now, I gave him copies of the stuff and gave him a little direction, but I didn't represent him. 10th Circuit put my name in the opinion, you know, that I'd gone down there, which could be good or bad. So anyway, but let me get to the point. So that's, the book is mainly for my clients, their families, or people that are in trouble and they need help, and defendants. Okay. And I send a lot of the books into the prisons, okay, to help explain to them how to do it. And on the faith part of it, look, most people, I mean, the criminal justice, most of these guys, the criminal justice system's not going to work out well for them at all. You know what I'm saying? And like everybody, what they need is faith. And I tried to approach it from a standpoint when I got in here, explaining to them that, you know, God uses broken people, and you know, in hopes that, you know, I can inspire a few of them. I mean, I've seen a lot of clients over the years. I don't know if you guys know who Dixie Pebworth is. That is a pastor at God's Shining Light. He became a pastor, or he gave his life to Christ in the Oklahoma County Jail after convicted by a jury. And he's a pastor at God's Shining Light, and he runs the Wings of Freedom program, and he helps a lot of people coming out of prison. My stepfather is a chaplain, you know, a volunteer chaplain at the jail. And then there's another. I sent a lot of Bibles into prisons, into the jails. Okay. But I don't have a nonprofit. I just buy the Bibles and send the Bibles. I couldn't deduct it. I thought about starting a nonprofit, you know, but I thought, what a hassle, you know. Yeah. Well, I put it in the last chapter of the book. I could deduct that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I could deduct that, but I just felt compelled to it. And the hope is after they listened to me explain to the criminal justice system, explain to things that they may have suspected or thought or recognized but didn't understand why, that they'll also listen to me.
Okay,
about the Bible.
I got two comments, but before I do, I just want to say some of our ministry friends here in Tulsa especially, if God's speaking to your heart about helping facilitate that through a church or something, or talk to Kevin. I got 2 points I want to talk about. First of all, our mutual friend, Al Gerhardt, actually used to be a client of yours.
Yeah.
He mentions years ago, he saw a different Kevin than what he sees now.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about the change.
Well, you know, I was raised in a church, gave my life to Christ when I was young, like 5. And then, you know, and I talk about this at the beginning, just a little section. I felt like I needed to address it, you know, that I had the answer when I was young. And then I started looking for the truth out in the middle of the world. And then there was a time that in October, in the spring of 2019, when God started, like, you know, really moving in my life. And I had a friend of mine that I'd represented. He went to federal court. He went to federal prison. He sold some cocaine to an undercover, which will get you put in federal
That'll
prison
get you
almost every time. And he gave his life to Christ and actually had become a minister. And I had all these crazy ideas, and I was thinking, he kind of set me up really. And he said, I mean, it was God, but he said, I thought that, I told him, I thought all these religions were the same,
Mm.
And he says, you know what you ought to do? He says, you ought to read the Bible, and then you can compare them.
Okay.
So I got and I remember the day. It was May the 1st of 2019. I was driving there on Route 66, coming back from Claremore. We live in Verdigris, and I'd bought I had a James Earl Jones reads the Bible, with a big voice.
Yeah, I remember that. Uh-huh.
And it was on the 3rd chapter of Matthew, and where John the Baptist is saying, "Repent, the kingdom of heaven is at hand." And I just remember he said, in my mind, I was like, there's that word again. Somebody's trying to make me do something I want to do.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden it was like, no, Kevin, you're wrong. It's not somebody trying to make you do something you want to do. It's just admitting that what you were doing is wrong.
Okay.
It's a mistake. And I broke right then. I mean, started crying, started sobbing. And it was a process later that whole day. And the next day I woke up and everything was different. And, I used to be so mean that my wife used to pray for me while I was asleep because I was too mean for her to pray for me while I was awake. You know what I'm saying? And
that's a good one.
It was true. And I tell you, even before the thing that happened to my friend, what had started it is we have a 9-year-old.
Okay.
And she, we were in the car one day, and she's an incredibly loving, sweet child, and very strong faith. And she was like 3.
Yeah.
Okay. And she said, about to turn 4, but she was talking. She goes, I love Harper. I love Hudson. I love Addie. I love Ari. I love Grandma. I love Grandpa. She goes, I love everybody. Well, instantly I kind of swelled up and said, look at me. How great I am. I got this loving child. And then it's like, it's not an audible voice, but it's God. It's a spirit talking.
It was louder than that.
Yeah. It says, no, Kevin, she's not loving because of you. She's loving in spite of you.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
Sam.
And so then I decide that, I'm gonna be like Kenny. I'm gonna be loving too. And I couldn't do it. I mean, could not do it. And I started thinking, well, maybe I'm just getting a little too fast here. Maybe I just need to start by not being a jerk. You know what I'm saying? And
bite-sized pieces of Christianity.
I couldn't do that either. You know what I'm saying? And that kind of got me going. And then the incident, when I was listening to it, because it's the power of the Word of God when you hear it. And just like when you're having a problem, and this scripture will come to mind. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and it's bringing it up. But so anyway, that's started, and then I guess it was an accelerated course. I mean, because I was a real strong, when I was young, I really did believe. But then it was like, I never finished the first point. My wife used to pray for me when I was asleep. And the next morning when I woke up and the whole world was different, was my wife's birthday. And I always kind of thought that had a meaning. But then 3 days later, my father, or 3 or 4 days later, my father had a heart attack, and his heart stopped in the St. John's in Sapulpa. They life flighted him over to the St. John's in Tulsa, and that was a whole incident. But basically, to sum it up, after 6 weeks, they were trying to put my father on hospice, and they were overdosing my morphine, because that's what they do on hospice. And they were trying to get me to agree to it, saying that we don't think, we don't feel, we don't believe that your father could ever get back to having a decent quality of life.
It's assisted suicide.
I said, that's not our choice. That's God's decision. Yeah. Anyway, I had to get an attorney. You might know the guy, Brian Crane.
Oh, yeah, I know Brian.
Okay.
Former senator.
Represented me and got me appointed emergency guardian.
There you go.
and went down there and made them pull it. They'd already started the morphine, made him pull him off the morphine.
Whoa.
And called the pastor at our church, this little Baptist church out there in Verdigris,
Mhm.
and called my stepfather, who's a minister, and they came up. They both told me at the time that I can't make it until the evening. I was like, okay, well, whenever you can get here, because I called them both.
Mhm.
And then they both independently on their own decided they had to go to the hospital. And they'd never met before, didn't have each other's phone number, and they both arrived about 30 seconds of each other. And we went in and prayed for my father. And the next day he was talking and eating eggs. And my father lived another 2.5 years.
There you go.
And there was litigation over the whole thing. And what I had found out is that 6 doctors had gotten together and decided that he wasn't going to make it through the night, and they were going to give enough morphine to make sure that he didn't. And he did. And in fact, one of those, and then a few weeks later, one of those doctors told me, she said, your father's dying. I was like, no, he's not.
Mhm.
And she's like, no, he's dying. I said, look, my father's not dying.
Mhm.
Okay. I just don't like the way you guys are treating him. And she says, look, if your father lives 3 months, it'll be a miracle. And I said, I'm glad you said that, because when it happens, I don't want to hear you denying it. Okay. Yep. And he lived another 2.5 years. And so he passed when he was in the VA hospital, or the VA home out in Claremont.
There's some, if I could, by the way, why don't you point that microphone straight at you? It's catching most of your words, but turn it down facing to your chin. There you go.
Okay.
You talked about how the federal government twice this year reversed some convictions, serious ones.
Yeah.
Those would have been already gone through the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals. I remember having you come in. First time I met you, I was president of the Republican Assembly here in town. And we're looking over the judges on, and you particularly opposed one guy who ended up getting on Court of Criminal Appeals, said he handled the case where I represented Al Gerhardt.
Yeah.
That got thrown out as a clear violation of Al's constitutional rights involving the state senator. And that guy got on.
Yeah.
What's the guy's name? You don't want to say.
His name is James Rowan.
Rowan. Okay.
I'm friends with him on Facebook.
I'll see what I can do about that.
Yeah.
But so I don't know how he voted on some of these, but we were fortunate this last election, for the first time in Oklahoma history, we, impeached and threw off the court a justice who's been there 40 some years.
Yeah.
So there's hope if we can educate the voters, and we see judges who are really screwing up like they did twice this year already.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the United States Supreme Court is not a liberal court.
No.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's a rather conservative court. And it's interesting to see these, a judge at the district court level is going to have different concerns than the judge at the Court of Criminal Appeals level. That's going to have at a federal district judge, that's going to have at a federal appellate court, that's going to have the United States Supreme Court. It's interesting for the different layers. But, the brilliance of the United States Constitution is the separation of powers.
Yeah.
And sometimes when, I guess I would say power hungry people don't like the separation of power.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And even if you had a president or somebody in a position of power that was very, that would do things exactly the way you wanted to, and everybody could agree with fair, you wouldn't want to give them unlimited power, because what about the next guy or the guy after that?
Mm-hmm.
Human nature tends towards tyranny, but if you had a guy that was a defense attorney like me that became a judge, which I never would, you would hope that they would change their perspective or what their goals were, and I've had some, I've seen some judges. One was on the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals, is actually now in the Supreme Court, was a state court prosecutor, and was very, very zealous. And when she first got on the bench, I was like, I don't know,
Mhm.
you know, but rose to the occasion and has been a very good judge,
Good.
you know, on all levels. So
Sure.
I guess I would say that, you know, just because somebody was like, I mean, look, you want a prosecutor to be hardcore zealous, you know, you want a defense attorney to be hardcore zealous.
Yeah, it's a role they play, right?
Yeah, but then when they become a judge, you hope that they're, you know, they're
Temper.
yeah,
Right, balanced out.
that they have it, that they understand the system, and frankly, your best trial judges for a defense attorney are former trial lawyers that were when they were prosecutors. Those, in my opinion, those are generally your best ones because they appreciate the jury trial system and they appreciate, you know, and they had the ability to try a case themselves and they understood how it worked.
Mhm.
You know, they generally make the best judges at the state court, at the state court level.
You know, that's one of the issues I have with many of our fellow Republicans. It's like I have a saying that our people have gone so far right that they've gone all the way around to the left. So by that I mean they take on the same personalities of the people on the left, but they want to use it for their own. So in other words, they want basically tyranny, but tyranny from the right. So we want our judges to come in and exact vengeance. You know, every ruling we make is going to turn everything upside down to make it right, to get things back in balance. And that's not how it's supposed to work. And so I'm not, so I have a hard time with that sometimes. There are certain issues that, yes, you can't compromise on.
Yeah.
But some of the things, it's not a compromise. It's just fair. I mean, it's just, that's the way it should be, you know, and we can't dig our heels in and say, it's got to be this way because we got to get those guys, you know, and it just drives me nuts sometimes when I see that attitude. And Dave and I mean, we fight a lot, but
only when he's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. but we do have that same understanding, that basic understanding on some of those things. Yeah. And but getting back to your situation, you know, it must be tough, you know, again, you know, you're a man of God and only a man of God, but a godly man. That's more important than being a man of God, I think. But in your position, because you get to meet unsavory characters, and on both sides, you meet unsavory characters that are being prosecuted, and sometimes the ones doing the prosecuting may be unsavory as well, and you've got to deal with both sides of it. And I can imagine that there was a period of time when I had a decision to make, go to law school and become a lawyer or become a missionary. Mm-hmm. And I think God saved me and sent me off to the mission field.
Yeah.
I often think that because I just don't know if, with my personality, I don't know if I could have done it.
I feel like it's an opportunity for me. I feel like God brings people to me that he wants me to help. You know, the second court-appointed case that I'd taken, and this is like in 2002, it was my second jury trial. Maybe not the second court-appointed case, but it was my second jury trial. I walk into the cell with this guy, and the guy looks at me and says, you know, God, I've been praying to God to send me somebody, and you're it. And I was like, yeah, whatever, buddy. You know, I mean, I was so full of myself from winning the first trial, you know, and at the end of the case, he's standing in the corner of 5th and Main, saying, you know, screaming, yelling, praise God, praise Jesus, you know, and this lawyer I know walked by and he looks at me and goes, I guess you guys won, huh? And I was so arrogant and I said, yeah, I won, you know. And gave God no credit for it at all. You know, it was all me. But the thing is so, I mean, I do find it as an opportunity, you know, to witness to people. And, you know, for instance, David Ware.
Yeah.
he was in the Tulsa County Jail, and somebody he did not even know sent him a Bible.
Wow.
And he opened it up and he started reading it.
Yeah.
And I saw his investigator earlier this year, the investigator he has on the case, because these things go on for a long time. And the investigator, told me that, David still had his faith.
Mm.
And, so many people, they look at somebody who has done something like that, or accused of doing something like that, or has actually done it, and they think, well, they're such an awful person. There's no way that God could ever forgive, or God could ever love that person. You know what I'm saying? Unlike me.
God's not that big.
Yeah, unlike myself, where God could clearly love somebody like me.
Yeah.
And they just, they just resent it. It goes to that whole good guy, bad guy thing, And so, I mean, I'm hopeful. And, there's a statute that's not followed. I think it's Title 57, 100 and something. Okay. That says from 1910, that says that the state or county shall provide a Bible or a New Testament to every inmate that wants one. And now it's mainly churches it's mainly churches and ministry.
Gideon.
Gideon that do it. But you want somebody to arrest these people and to lock these people up. But look, we could go down here to Woodland Hills Mall and we could set up a table and we could pass out Bibles, and we'd probably have trouble getting rid of a case. Okay. People don't out in the world, they don't want them, but you go into a jail or a prison and those guys will take the Bibles.
Sure they will.
And they'll read them. Okay. And hopefully they continue to read them, and hopefully it makes that change. Because if a guy doesn't start to change in prison, he ain't going to change.
Right.
And you know what? God loves a hungry heart.
Yeah. Sometimes
God looks at that inmate as having a more pure heart, hungry for him, than the rest of us. Yeah. Hey, I wanted to.
Well, let me just ask real quickly in the situation with David Ware. Last time we spoke, I think you were looking at, or he was looking at an appeal or anything. Where is that? Is he still looking at appeals, or is he through with his appeals? Or
no, he is. It's at the direct appeal level, and my understanding, it's all been submitted to the court. It's waiting on the Court of Criminal Appeals. After the Court of Criminal Appeals decide, if they do not reverse it, then he'll have an opportunity to appeal to the United States Supreme Court. Okay. And then if he loses that, then it would start the post-conviction process and then go into a federal habeas process and then back to the Supreme Court.
Would you explain for the people the word habeas?
Federal habeas under federal court, if you're a state prisoner that has a conviction in state court and it involves a federal constitutional right, generally, you can appeal it to the federal courts, complaining that the state court has ignored your federal constitutional rights or violated your federal constitutional rights.
You said reverse it. Isn't there also a procedural thing where you say, no, you didn't run the trial correctly, retry it?
Well, yeah.
It'd be a vacating it.
Yeah. So when you reverse a conviction, most frequently it's reversed and remanded, okay, for retrial. Okay. It is possible under certain circumstances to be reversed and remanded with instructions to dismiss. That's what happened in Al's case.
Yeah.
But like if you have a search and seizure issue where like they're not going to basically after this decision, they're not going to have a case.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that would never be on a case like David's. It would always be reversed with instructions for a retrial.
Yeah. You remember the judge that was dead set on his own jury instructions. In every case that got convicted had to be redone because of his.
Yeah. That was Hopper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Presumed not guilty.
So that was a procedural thing.
Yeah.
That didn't go to whether or not the evidence was proper.
Yeah. I talk about this a little bit in the book. Look, appeals are about process. Okay. An appeal is a process complaint. What you're doing is you're complaining that the process by which the jury reached its verdict was flawed. Now, a lot of people, the hardest thing they have to wrap their head around is after their loved one, them or their loved one gets convicted, is they want to keep re-arguing the jury's conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
The appellate court is not going to replace its opinion with the opinion of the jury. And frankly, we wouldn't want them to. I mean, from a defendant standpoint, you wouldn't want them to.
Yeah. With a rare exception like Al's case, where you said, no, this was his constitutional right to do this.
Yeah, but you see, that was a process. That was a process problem. It wasn't that the jury reached the wrong factual conclusion. The judge is the judge of the law. The jurors are the finders of fact.
Gotcha.
Okay. And we're not challenging. And even if you're challenging not guilty, that no reasonable jury could have reached this conclusion. Okay. What you're actually saying is it's a legal problem. That's a legal problem because it's a complete absence of the evidence that was there. And
for an example, Trump being found guilty in New York City in that case where most of us are of the, I won't say no for a fact, but are of the opinion that that jury was totally tainted and did not find on fact. They just came up with this, with a lady, that couldn't remember when in 10 years it happened or what, exactly, and those type of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I referenced Trump's case in here a little bit, just in passing, but the thing that people don't understand about jury trials is they always look at these jury trials and they always talk about the evidence. Okay. The evidence. Look, a jury trial is a story war. It is storytelling in a hostile environment. I'm telling one story and the prosecutor's telling another. Okay. And while we're each doing whatever we can to mess up each other's stories. But at the end,
well put.
But at the end of the day, a jury trial is a criminal jury trial is a skirmish in the story war. I mean, in the culture war. It's a skirmish in a culture war most of the time. Look at O.J. Simpson. Okay. Most of the, the white people are upset. Most of the black people are dancing in the streets. Okay.
They totally turned it into a cultural war.
Look at George Floyd. Look at Trayvon Martin. Look at the Trump cases. They're dividing. If they're not skirmishes in the cultural war, then why do they divide along political and cultural lines? Because what you're doing here, and the amazing thing about the jury trial is you could take a trial. I mean, you could take average people. First of all, I'd rather be judged by the first 12 people walking down the street than any judge in the state of Oklahoma. Okay.
Wow.
And there's no offense from any of them, but it's just that when I'm picking a jury, the most important characteristic in picking that juror is how do they view the power structure and how does that relate to my case?
Yes.
And the system generally does not allow people into positions of power unless their ultimate loyalty is to the system itself, not necessarily what the system professes to believe. Okay. And it's the power structure that's bringing the charges against my client.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. And when you're picking a jury, well, when you're trying a jury as a defense attorney, what you're actually saying is, I think I can pick 12 people and tell them a story, and they're going to see the case closer to my point of view than they're going to see to your point of view.
Yeah.
And you need a different jury if you're representing a police officer accused of assaulting a protester than you do if you're representing a protester accused of assaulting a police officer. And if you don't understand that, you have no business representing people in front of on criminal charges in front of a jury because you're not a trial lawyer. It depends upon the type of jurors that you have. In fact, when you see these police corruption cases and they prosecute them, I would say that I've seen the most common mistake that you see from the prosecutors is they pick the same jury they would have if they weren't prosecuting a police officer. You know what I'm saying? You need to pick a defense jury, and that's the problem with a lot of these cases. It depends on how you present the case. If you want a conservative jury or a liberal jury, but I just love it that you could take a guy that doesn't even have a high school degree, doesn't have a high school diploma, and he could tell the most powerful law enforcement official in a county or a state or in the country, no, I don't think so. You know, I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The principle, people have used the term jury nullification. Can you simplify that for most people?
Jury nullification is when the jurors do something, okay, that is contrary to the law that they were instructed. Instead of doing what the law says, reaching the conclusion the law says they should reach, they reached a conclusion that they want to reach. Now, look, Al's case was almost a jury nullification. Okay. It was free speech.
Yeah.
The Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals ruled that it was free speech.
Yes.
Okay. But the judge on the case would not give us an instruction on free speech.
So he shut down your free speach in order to shut down Al's free speech.
Well, I mean, he wouldn't,
in the court.
Yeah, he wouldn't instruct the jury on free speech, right? But the jury still felt like there was something wrong, you know, and so they convicted him, but they fined him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean,
no jail time.
Yeah. I mean, where do you come across a case where the jury said, I mean, they're basically saying, yeah, we think something's wrong, but we're going to convict him because this, you know, without the free speech, it met all the elements, you know? And I've had other cases where judges refused to give instructions that I believe was real clear in the law that they should have been given, but the jury acquitted the client anyway, you know, and they just, we're not doing that.
Yeah. By the way, just so you guys know, Al Gerhardt said to Senator, if you don't bring this bill up in committee, we're going to have to investigate why. We're going to dig into your business dealings, your family's business dealings. And that was said to be blackmail by the prosecutors, right?
Yeah, they charge him with blackmail and they charge him in violation of the Oklahoma Computer Crimes Act.
Yeah, which is process crime because of.
Yeah, and on Rowan's issue, I would say it probably had more to do with his boss.
David Prater.
Yeah, because Al had gotten an investigation started
on David Prater.
Yeah,
tit for tat going on.
And the opinion kind of describes Al that he's kind of I can't remember the word
an irritant. They said
irritant. Yeah.
You know that's his license plate right now. I told him, I said, you're the official, and so he went and got him license.
Yeah, if you keep sticking your thumb in the eyes of people of power, eventually those people will come after you.
Yeah.
Hey, I'd like to change the subject one more time real quick. So we had talked before, which I wasn't aware of, that you apparently drove one of the vehicles when Donald Trump was here back in 2020, I guess it was, or was it 20?
No, it was 2020.
It was 2020?
No. I'm sorry. Not 2020. 2016.
16. I'm sorry.
Was it 15? Well, it was a state fair, right?
No. Trump came to Tulsa at the Mabee Center on January the 20th, 2006.
Okay.
We remember that date.
Yeah. That was 1 year before.
That's right.
He got sworn in.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's right.
That's right.
And then about several weeks after that, he came back to Oklahoma City and the second time, and he had a rally there. And I drove his staff in the Secret Service detail, me and Brian Keating, which was Frank Keating's nephew.
Okay.
Because I think
Dan's
son.
Yeah.
Dan was an early supporter.
Yeah, it was an early. And so drove his stuff, drove Scavino. Well, Palin was with him when he came to Tulsa.
Sarah.
Yeah.
And so I had his bodyguard, Keith, the old former New York City cop. You know, he was in the passenger seat on the way there.
Yeah.
And then Palin went back separately. So Keith rode with Trump on the way back. And then drove Scavino, Michael Glassner, and some people I didn't even know.
It's fun.
Yeah.
I got to do this for Santorum's family. And the only thing the cop said is drive faster. We're going down 169 about 80 miles an hour. And they're saying faster.
Yeah. I got yelled at by a Secret Service guy in Oklahoma City because I was allowing too much space between me and the vehicle in front of me.
Yeah.
But they had like this, I don't know, it was a Denali or something. I mean, it was some fancy SUV. And if you got too close, it would stop automatically.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I had that. Special.
And I'm afraid I'm going to run into somebody, you know.
Yeah.
We met Rubio, being Brian Keating, when he came to Oklahoma City. We're at the Will Rogers Airport up there, and they've got these private jet, like like, I guess it's like a private gate for rich people. You know what I'm saying? I've never been in one.
Private
You know what I'm saying?
aviation.
And so what happens is you're in there and they got like TVs and popcorn and, you know, it looked pretty nice. Real comfy chairs, a lot better than when you're sitting waiting to get on a plane. And every now and then somebody will walk in off the runway and they just landed in a private jet, you know? So we're waiting for Trump to arrive there. And we walked in, me and Brian walked in, and Rubio comes walking out of the bathroom, you know, because he had a rally up there at the same time. And we shook his hand, but we weren't that happy about it because, you know, at the time, him and Trump were fighting. Yeah, we were like hardcore, you know, supporting Trump, and now they're all friends. He had Chris Christie with him in Tulsa, and he had Stephen Miller that he got from Jeff Sessions. And Stephen Miller, I think, it just came over to Trump there in Oklahoma City.
You know, that's something that I always, every time he comes on, I talk about it to my wife, how Trump has taken his enemies and made them his staunchest allies. You know, you take Marco Rubio. I've never seen two guys that are more like-minded and work well together. And Ted Cruz is another one. That's how Dave and I met and got into it. When we first met, we were mortal enemies. About the whole the ORU stadium. And anyway, but and I mean, he viciously attacked both of them. You know, little Marco, and then Ted Cruz's father and his wife. Yet both of these guys were man enough to understand that they were in a battle, and they understood and learned that Trump, when you're in a battle with Trump, it's Katie bar the door. I mean, it's you know, there are no rules. I've talked about this before. You know, I grew up part of my youth in Philadelphia, and they have this thing. There's two types of fights. There's a fight, and then you call a fair one. And so when you start a fight with somebody, you have to yell fair one, because if you don't call fair one,
their big brother comes out.
There are no rules. And I learned that the hard way. I started against a 13-year-old. Next thing, I'm fighting against a 16-year-old. You know, and I'm 12.
Philadelphia,
and I'm 12. You know, and so I had to learn that pretty quickly. So Trump understands that from being in New York, that if you're in it to win it, you're in it to win it, and you do what it takes to win it. And so, but to me, it's so refreshing. I think Marco, of all of them, has learned so much, because when I see him doing these news interviews, he's amazing. I mean, he takes no guff. I mean, he's probably the best on these interviews that I've seen.
Well, it's interesting. I think about the Marco thing. I like J.D. Vance. I like J.D. Vance a lot. But people just say, like, oh, well, obviously J.D. Vance is going to inherit, you know, is going to be the heir apparent, I guess, of the Trump. I'm not so sure it's not going to be Rubio.
I agree.
You know what I'm saying? And I think there's going to be a fight coming between those two, you know, for 2028, because both of them would be. I mean, I like our choices better than the Democrats.
Well,
is there a choice there?
Well, it lines up perfectly with the Obama situation. Who was his heir? It wasn't his Vice President Biden. It was his Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. See, so it's the same thing.
Yeah, but they had a bench back then.
Yeah, I know.
Right now, you know, because right now it's Newsom. Newsom seems to be, or Kamala again.
Or Crockett.
Crockett.
What's her name? The black woman.
Oh,
AOC would be there before Crockett.
Yeah, I know.
And Walls is trying to make himself there, but
oh no, he is just disgusting. I mean, even to his own people, they don't like him, which we can get into here in a little bit. His latest thing you saw, where he had this big rally and he's skipping around the stage like he does, but he was talking about Tesla, and he was talking down, you know, basically applauding the vandalism of the Teslas and the Tesla stock going down, 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 until it was pointed out that billions of dollars of the state pension fund is in Tesla. I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars are invested in Tesla. Then all of a sudden he comes out a couple of days later, oh, I was just kidding. Yeah, you don't kid like that. You don't kid like that. I mean, he is an idiot.
I say don't rule out is the sports broadcaster Stephen Smith.
Running for president?
Oh, he's talking about it.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Stephen.
No, the ones who are going to recap what I will now call the Clinton wing of the Democrat Party will be more moderate than this bunch that we've seen.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
And it'll be Stephen Smith, and I think Newsom's trying to reposition himself that way. And what's his name? Fetterman? Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand. He realized, he's smart enough to realize he's now in a purple state and he needs to be more like Joe Manchin.
Well, see, where they messed up is when, do you remember who was the other choice from Pennsylvania for vice president? Remember they had a choice between
Shapiro. Governor Shapiro. Yeah.
He was young, good looking, sharp, intelligent guy. And I'll tell you why I think this shows how stupid the whole party was, or the apparatus at the time. I think they didn't pick Shapiro specifically because he would have made Kamala look bad.
Yeah, that's it. That's a point.
I think that's right, because you don't want your vice presidential candidate looking smarter and more intelligent and more electable than your presidential candidate.
That's what happened with Lloyd Benson. He made Dukakis look bad. A lot of people thought Benson should have been top of the team. Right. This is an 88.
And so they picked what's his name out of Minnesota?
Yeah,
Tim Walz. And mission was accomplished. He made Kamala look good.
Big scandal about to reveal itself. But corruption and involvement of the Chinese Communist Party in Minnesota. Get ready for it.
Okay.
The thing is
can't wait.
There's 80 million. They claim that Biden got 80 million villains. Okay. Okay.
Right.
And there's a lot of them that just didn't show back up the second election.
Yeah.
So if you had done something to get Biden more votes than what he was entitled to, okay, and you knew they weren't going to be there the second election, then why would you want against Trump? And you basically knew I can't beat him the second time because we don't have coronavirus going on where we can mail in a bunch of votes. Okay. Then why would you want to be the sacrificial lamb at that time? You're better off keeping your powder dry and then trying again when Trump's gone in 2028.
You know what I'd like to see? And by the way, they are passing a bill now that says all the ballots have to be in at the closing of the polls on election day. What I think we ought to do is secure. All right, has everybody got all the ballots collected? Once everybody say, okay, now start counting. Because this was a thing going back to 1960 with Mayor Daley in Chicago. They got to see what downstate did for the Republicans, so they knew how many votes they had to come up with.
Yeah.
And we saw that with Biden in 80. All of a sudden, 3 a.m. when they had supposed pipe leaks, water main breaks, and everything, all of a sudden, big dumps of hundreds of thousands of ballots.
Well, in came the rollerback suitcases.
Yes.
From underneath the tables.
Yeah.
And
You saw the same thing in 2024 in certain districks, congressional districts, especially.
California.
Gary Richardson and I and some other guys used to play poker. Okay.
Yeah, I remember.
And after the hand, one guy would, a guy would bet and the other guy would fold and say, well, what'd you have? And the joke was first liar doesn't stand a chance. You know what I'm saying? Because the guy said, I had 3 of a kind. The guy said, I had a full house. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of the same way, I guess, with the votes. You know what I'm saying? They want to slow it down to see how many votes they got to see what the number is that they got to beat.
It's clear corruption.
And yeah, I definitely think it's a problem.
Because what happened, it was 6 counties swung the election for Biden. Just 6 counties.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
but I think it's actually accrued to Trump's benefit. I think the 4 years off and everything they did to him and all that has done nothing but make him stronger.
I agree.
And I think it's exposed a lot of stuff that people otherwise would have never believed.
Mm-hmm.
In the new coalition that he's got between MAGA and MAHA. And, I mean, I think it's strong.
I think you're right on.
I think it's strong.
Right on. All right. Should we wrap?
All right. Yes. Well, Kevin, thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming in. The book again for everyone out there. So if you've been falsely accused, and even if you're guilty, or even if you did it, I'm just paraphrasing. Yeah. And where can people get this? It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon. And Kevin Adams, if you don't remember the title, but Falsely Accused basically is the main title. And then Kevin Adams, you can get, and how much is it?
It's like $10.
$10. Oh yeah. So yeah.
I know you're doing podcasts and certain speaking events, any of them that you can speak publicly at that people can join or?
Yeah, I mean, mainly you guys are the only podcast I've ever done.
Is that right?
I'm saying, yeah, you guys are the only podcast I've ever done. I've get some emails every now and then, but I've never done one. Yeah.
Well, and Kevin Adams is the common spelling, and it's falsely accused with a question mark. So when you go into your search query, do that and it should pull right up.
Yeah.
And good. Any cases you're working on of note?
I mean, I've got a couple murder cases, but there's
just a couple of murder cases.
By the way, you were telling us about last time you're in, you got this other case in eastern Oklahoma, but they locked up a victim and accused her of a murder where she was basically kidnapped and kept in a cage.
Yeah, well, we got that all straightened out. I was going to try the case. She was charged with murder. You know what I'm saying? She called the police. She was sobbing so hard, it took her 15 minutes to tell them their name. She did manage to get out that he was going to kill me. When the cops showed up, all she had was a Bible with a bullet hole in it. And he had all these cages and stuff around his property that certainly appeared like that they were there to lock up women.
Yeah.
And there were different bags of clothing that were like different sizes and stuff. And he actually, in this one room, it was a shed that he had converted where you could lock somebody in there. On the wall, he had pictures of demons and stuff, and one of them said "F-U-C-K" or death above. Anyway, and it looked to me like the guy, But anyway, the neighbors heard her screaming for a couple hours before she called the police, and they were used to hearing the sounds of women's screams come from that place. So anyway, the state offered us not guilty by reason of mental illness. Because she spent some time in the mental hospital afterwards. It just like broke her.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, it just like broke her. But anyway, we did end up taking that. And then so they come up with a treatment plan for the person. And the treatment plan was basically she had to live with her mother and check in with a mental health professional once a month. But we didn't believe the judge should have ordered continued supervision because of the requirements of the statute. So I appealed it to the Oklahoma Supreme Court. They assigned it to the Court of Civil Appeals, and the Court of Civil Appeals agreed with me. And so now she's completely free.
Okay.
Praise the Lord.
So she had a limited sort of probation kind of thing.
Yeah. It's interesting because once you're found not guilty by reason of mental illness, even though it's still under a criminal case, it becomes a civil matter.
Yeah.
And the issue is whether or not you have a history of noncompliance, okay, or whether you need continued supervision because of unresolved mental health conditions. She had no history of noncompliance, and the doctors said that it was a one-time schizophrenic event, and they basically cut her loose. So she's and they're not from Oklahoma. But yeah, she's
Right.
she's completely free now.
Good.
So
Well,
I don't have anything to
Dave has those one-time schizophrenic
events all the time?
once a week.
Yeah.
One time a week.
Yeah.
Feel better, Eddie?
Yeah.
All right, Kevin, we're going to take
Kevin,
a break.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to next time for your next book, your sequel.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't do it.
Yeah.
Next roundup.
Or
coming up.
especially if you didn't do it.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you. Seriously, we appreciate it. God bless.
I'm Jeff Davis with Just a Thought. For those sitting in the back row, here's a tiny primer on civics. There are 3 co-equal branches of government. A thumbnail of the jobs the branches have. There is the executive, which is the president, including the Department of Justice and the FBI to enforce laws. The legislative, composed of the Senate and the House of Representatives, which is responsible for making laws and spending approval. Then there's the judicial, which is the Supreme Court, responsible for interpreting the validity of laws. The important word is co-equal. It's also a word that's quickly losing any meaning as Chief Justice Roberts makes snarky comments and fails to reel in lower court judges with an agenda interfering in the decisions of the co-equal branch, the presidential. There's the belief that these activist judges are trying to set Trump up with an impeachment trap for defying their orders they should have no power to impose. All the bogus claims Democrats have made during Trump's first term have expired, so now they use lawfare, not just against the president, but the wishes of the American people. Just a thought. I'm Jeff Davis.
A fitting introduction for the second portion of the Fresh Black Coffee program. All right, we had Kevin Adams for our first segment. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's interesting getting a trial lawyer in. I remember, man, time flies so fast. I truly did almost become a lawyer at one point, but God saved me. Saved
All my
twice.
family says
Saved twice.
I should have been a lawyer. And I think I
should.
probably could have enjoyed it.
You could have enjoyed it.
Yeah. You know, I taught high school debate about 12 years ago. My daughter, we homeschool our kids, but for my last one, my daughter, she took a lot of these more advanced and group classes at Cornerstone Tutorial Center, which, they do like drama, theater arts. You can only argue with your parents so much, and eventually they want you to go argue with someone else. So you sign up for high school speech and debate. And then the teacher, halfway through the year, had some kind of health issue or something, and they were going to have to cancel a class. They couldn't find someone. And finally, they approached me and said, do you think you can handle debate? I used to teach at a Christian school, but not debate. Like, yeah. So I looked at the book that the kids had to buy at the beginning of the school year for this, and it was all Oxford debate, Like, who uses that, really? So I completely changed the syllabus, and one section of it, Eddie, was courtroom litigation. And I said, kids, you need to know this. In fact, their assignment one week was to watch the movie My Cousin Vinny, and which is great humor. It's a great movie about Southern justice, but you learn the rules because they're very good about that. But the week before, we'd gone to the legislature and helped pass a bill because it was one we debated using the legislative rules, which are completely different. The first thing we taught them was Robert's Rules of Order. You don't learn that. And see, Eddie, none of this stuff is taught in schools. Instead, they teach you this highbrow Oxford debate. They don't teach kids the things need to know for life.
My favorite movie like that was Al Pacino movie.
Injustice for All?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But
that ain't a comedy. That's a tragedy.
Well, but it also teaches you how not to do it. Because remember, at the end, he broke all the rules. He basically turned on his client and said, he did it. He did it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, of course, he went to jail himself.
Hey.
Got disbarred for turning on his client because his client basically lied to him the whole time and was a killer and a murderer and a deceiver and everything. But I'll never forget that. Al Pacino, to me, is one of the greats. The great. I mean, I don't know of a male actor that's any better than Al Pacino. If you look at from when he first came on the scene in The Godfather as Michael, you know, he was this clean cut young veteran just coming back from the war, and you know, a military guy, decorated, and then in the end, he ends up becoming the new Godfather, you know, and every movie after, the different movies he's done, the different things he's played, the guy. And one of my favorite ones is in the movie Dick Tracy, the Dick Tracy movie. And he played, I can't remember, whether it was Mumbles. I think it was Mumbles that he was, or one of these characters in the Dick Tracy movie. And this scene is etched in my mind forever. And he says, oh, wait, I got a thought. Come, oh, here it comes. Yeah. It's gone. You know, I will never, but it's not just the way that he said it. It's the way he did it. You know, that's what makes a great actor.
Yeah. Not
that they said it, but it's the way they said it, you know. So anyway, Al Pacino, one of the great ones.
And Justice for All. I think Kevin would tell you too, and other attorneys I know say it's probably one of the best movies to watch to help show you the reality of our court system.
Right. Except the end, one of the things you cannot do as an attorney, a defense attorney.
The thing I remember at the end was he has to have somebody represent his client, a cross-dresser. And the guy screws up, right? And he goes and bashes in that guy's car, that other attorney.
Right, right. But what I'm saying is, as far as the rules of defense, he's the defense attorney, and he basically turns on his client and basically tells the jury he's guilty. He did, you know, and that's something you can't do as a defense attorney.
Other attorney who didn't care enough to show up said, oh, but he can appeal it. Mm-hmm. The guy hung himself in his jail cell that night. And Pacino, that attorney.
Well, that was an earlier case. That wasn't the main case. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the main case. That was
right. I'm just saying that's the one that stood out.
Right. That's the one. Yeah, it was a different case, which probably is a part of what made Pacino so mad, what set him off to turn on his own client, because he realized that the court system and the title Justice for All is kind of a joke, that it was not justice for all.
No, it wasn't. If you want to see that point in a comedy, watch Liar to Liar with
Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey.
Liar.
Yeah. Because he does get his attorney off, but by proving she's a liar.
Right.
She lied about her age, and therefore the contract's null and void. She was not an adult.
Right. Hey, let's get to some current events.
Oh, you want the big one? Texas Tech is still alive.
Rocking the double T here today.
There are 8 teams still live as of broadcast.
Yeah, and 2 Big 12 teams, and not the ones you would expect. Well, one of them you do. Houston would, but Arizona's out.
Yeah, and
Kansas is out.
Iowa State.
They
were the top until Houston actually.
Well, no, the top 3, believe it or not, were Arizona. Well, Houston, Arizona, and Texas Tech. Yeah, it was the top 3 teams.
Yeah, you're right.
And then, but Iowa State and Brigham Young were in it. Let me think. Who? OU, I think, barely. They were like the numbers. You know, we usually get 6 teams in there.
Well, Oklahoma is an SEC trader.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry for not OU. Let me see. Who was it? There was somebody. Who was it?
Kansas.
Oh, Baylor.
Yeah, Baylor.
Kansas and Baylor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had 6 teams, but Kansas bowed out early, real early. They were out
First round.
Yeah.
Yep. So there are, of the 8 left, 2 are Big 12. But get this, 4 of them are SEC.
SEC is having to be.
In fact, every one of those 4 games left
Has an
in
SEC.
this round is an SEC team.
I think you're right.
The SEC could completely own the Final Four.
Yeah.
If it goes right.
Yeah. I hope Tech can beat Florida. Tech plays Florida next.
Yeah.
I hope.
They're a 1 seed.
Now, what is Duke this time?
They're a 2 seed, I believe.
Okay. Houston.
No, they're a 1 seed. Houston's a 1 seed, and then Auburn's a 1 seed.
Okay. Yeah.
So those are your 1 seeds, and the 1 seeds.
So basically, out of the semis, I guess. Oh no, Sweet 16. We're in the Sweet 16 now, right?
No, that.
Elite 8.
Yeah,
we're in the Elite 8. Oh, go Tech. So anyway, so Houston, Tech, Duke, and who's the other non? So that means five. How many is the
SEC's got 4.
4? So there's one other non. So Houston, Tech, Duke.
Right now. Yeah.
Oh, Michigan.
Michigan State. Tom Izzo's.
Oh, it says Michigan State.
Yep.
Oh, I thought it was Michigan. Okay.
No.
So that would do it.
Yeah, Michigan State actually was ranked higher than Michigan, but yeah, they're the one. Oh man, got NCAA women.
Please bear with us.
You know what bugs me?
We got to get all this
is
down.
the political correctness. ESPN has to give just as much credibility to the women's tournament as the men's, even though 95% of the traffic is interested in the men's tournament. You know, it's like those WNBA women.
Pig,
Yeah, like those WNBA teams that think that they get a share of LeBron James's income.
You know what started that? The WSL.
Okay. Yeah.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
They started sharing, which is ridiculous because they think because they won a championship.
Yeah. How's that working out for them?
Yeah, exactly.
They suck.
Yeah. Now they do. Exactly.
So yeah, you got 4,
all right, here we go.
4 games left today and tomorrow. All right. You've got Auburn and Michigan State. Okay. That's a 1 versus 2. Then you got the other Duke versus Alabama. They're a 1 versus 2. Duke's the number 1. And then
Alabama. What is the number?
Alabama's a 2 seed.
A 2. Okay.
Yep.
Florida's the number 1.
Florida's a 1 seed. They're against
Texas Tech.
Texas Tech, which is a 3 seed. And then you've got a Houston and Tennessee is a 1 versus 2. So Tech, if there was a Cinderella, which there's not.
So we're at number 3, we're a Cinderella. That's right.
Tech is the only 3 seed left. Other than that, it's all 1s versus 2s.
Wow. Which is unusual because usually we have like a number 8 in there in the last several years because, you know, we've had some Cinderella teams.
Yeah. So
we are the Cinderella team. Get your glass slippers.
What really happened, St. John's, Big East team, lost in the second round to Arkansas. And then your alma mater, Texas Tech, dispatched Arkansas. So never had to play St. John's, but got their slot.
Right.
So that's what's going on. You know what I hate about this is that it's no longer a CBS tournament, which is free. Now you got to have an ESPN subscription to watch.
Oh, okay.
I listen on the Varsity app. They have all these games. In fact, last night I had a choice of listening to the Houston or the Purdue feed. You know, sportscast.
You know, what I found to me is the best deal, which I think I'm thinking about switching from my Dish, which I like Dish, but I seem to be able to get the same thing for about $100 or at least $60 less. Fubu.
Yeah.
Fubo has all the sports on it, and it has all the other stuff on it.
Mm-hmm.
You get like 150 channels for like $90.
Yeah.
And that's the expanded version. If you want to get just the simple version, you get the sports, but you don't get all of the other stuff. You can get for about $50 a month.
Yeah. I do the free one. I've got an antenna.
The free boo.
And now, you talked me into switching from AT&T cell phone to
Sprint.
to T-Mobile.
Oh, T-Mobile, yeah.
Bought out Sprint, yeah. In the package I get, which is $90 for 2 cell phones with everything, unlimited, untethered, right? They throw in a Netflix subscription free. So, and a bunch of other ones free as well. So really the only thing I have as a quote paid that I don't directly pay for is Netflix. Other than that, it's Roku TVs. They're great TVs.
Yeah.
They really are.
I have Roku. In fact, I have Roku here.
Yeah.
I don't have it at home because I have everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's interesting.
But I just say, don't buy the Roku box where you need a separate remote for it. Just buy they're selling these TVs.
Oh, you don't need the box anymore?
No, you can buy the Roku TV. The TV.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's built in.
That's true. Like, see, I have an old TV in my office here.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing was $30.
Right.
The little Roku.
They're cheap, except you have to have 2 remotes.
Yeah, I do have to have 2
remotes. But now Samsung has their own proprietary version with their own network, libraries, apps, all that.
Really?
Yeah. And now there's another player. I saw Zumo that they were selling a 50-inch panel TV at Best Buy for $150.
Hey, while we're on this, yes, TVs are super cheap again. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Until the tariffs hit.
Yes, so go buy it now before the tariffs hit. But for those of you out there that are into technology and stocks, I'll deal with the stocks first. Let's deal with that, okay? The stock market has been taking a beating. And all of our liberal progressive people are, Trump, see what Trump has done? He's killing the stock market. No, Trump is providing a buying opportunity for everyone to get on board with. So what you need to do, take your money while the market is dipping, and not just dipping, it's diving. So save up your money every week, take $25, $50, $100, whatever you can afford. Get yourself a Charles Schwab or it used to be TD Ameritrade. I think you can still get a TD Ameritrade. You just get you one of these free trading accounts, okay? Get it set up. And then when the whistle blows that the market has bottomed out, then start buying slices. They're called slices. It costs you $5 per slice of whatever stock it's not whatever, but all of the stocks that are in there. NVIDIA is in there. Google is in there. Amazon, Twitter. No, not Twitter. I'm sorry. They're private. Facebook. All of these oil, gold companies that invest in gold, these things are all in there, okay? So, and the price is really cheap now. So when it bottoms out, I might give it another week until these guys get sick and tired of it bottoming. We got to get in it. And all of a sudden, it'll start going. You know, you've heard the saying, what goes up must come down. What goes down must come up, because these people have to make money, okay? They're not in the business of not making money. So this happened back in 1987. It happened in 2008, and it's happening again. Okay. So this is an opportunity for people who may not have been able to make money in the past to get in, and it'll probably last. The next ride up will probably last for a while. Now, with that, something else is about to happen. Elon Musk has just sold X to his other company. Everybody, again, liberals are so, I can't find another word that fits more appropriately than stupid.
Mm-hmm.
They think that because Elon paid $40 some a share for Twitter, he was a fool, because they think the valuation didn't make it worth that. They assume the valuation is maybe 30 some dollars a share.
Well, I heard he bought it for $44 billion.
Right.
But now I'm hearing out as of early this week, they said it's now valued at what he bought it for.
Well, I'm sorry, at 33 billion.
Okay.
33 billion, or like $33.
It's all speculation.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Nobody really knows, because it doesn't matter.
It's worth what somebody will pay for
exactly, privately. But what he's done, he has sold it to X for 33 billion.
Sold it to X.
I'm sorry, sold it to
XAI.
XAI, right. Okay. And it's funny because just day before yesterday, I came across these bulletins that XAI is going to hit the street on May 6th or the 15th. I can't remember exactly.
Public offering, you mean?
Public offering.
Okay, so this is a newly created corporation.
Right.
That basically Elon's sold one of his corporations to another of his corporations.
Right, which is about to hit the street.
Yeah.
And XAI is basically a new artificial intelligence something.
Yeah.
Above my pay grade, as they say. Right. But let me just read this to you, okay? Elon Musk's artificial intelligence company, XAI, has acquired the billionaire's social media platform, X, in a blockbuster deal valued at $33 billion. The combined company will deliver smarter, more meaningful experience to billions of people while staying true to our core mission of seeking truth and advancing knowledge, Musk wrote.
Mm-hmm.
This will allow us to build a platform that doesn't just reflect the world, but actually accelerates human progress.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to accelerate human progress.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote this in the digital town square where more than 600 million active users go to find real-time source of ground truth. In the last 2 years has been transformed. That's kind of weird. In the last 2 years has been transformed into one of the most efficient companies. I think he's talking about X has been in most efficient companies in the world, positioning it to deliver scalable future growth. So, but here's the deal. It's not just going to be a communications deal, okay? You will be able, it's going to be a combination of a search engine.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be able to do banking.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be like, what is the one he started? PayPal.
Right. And guess what? The precursor was, I had an account in a bank called X.com.
Right. Exactly.
And see, he bought that domain back.
Right.
Now, so banking was one of his first things.
Exactly. And so it's all going to be one thing.
Imagine if Facebook was a bank on top of everything else.
Mm-hmm. Well, they will probably try to follow suit, but he's going to be ahead of the game.
Because what did eBay do? They bought PayPal because they were so dependent on it. They could not handle it being outside of being dependent on some other business.
Right.
That can hold your business hostage.
Right.
So you bring it in-house.
Right.
That's the thing.
Yeah. So it is going to be the merging of probably 5 different platforms,
mm-hmm.
maybe more, into one.
Yeah.
And I mean, the guys, what's the old saying? He's playing chess while others are playing checkers.
Yeah.
He is so far ahead. While they're, you know, they're over looking over here while he's over here. They're worried about him and Doge.
Yeah.
They're worried about him and his auto being burned and everything. Meanwhile, he's over here about to make $1 trillion on this venture here.
This can be huge. It'll be bigger than Facebook.
Oh yeah.
Year.
Oh, it's bigger than anything anybody ever. I keep reading about it. They've been talking about it for about 2 years. I've been seeing this guy standing out here behind me. Elon Musk is doing something in this building. They won't tell you what it is. Well, they're finally telling you what it is. This now solidifies the fact that XAI has just purchased X and made it into one big thing. And probably before it's over, there'll be a few more things purchased and bought into make one huge company. Now, the only thing it probably won't happen now. It's a good thing that Trump is president now, and they control all of these entities, because if Biden were still in, they wouldn't allow him to do all this. They would find some reason to stop him.
Of course. This is why you've got Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg sitting at the front row of his inauguration, paying $1 million a piece for that chair they sat on, because they so need Trump to be the protector of corporate freedom.
Right.
Because right now you got Brazil's already shut down a bunch, including Twitter. You got the EU slapping fines left and right, throwing people in prison. The guy who developed Telegram is in prison. But here's what I want to get at. And by the way, let's just segue back a second here. Our guest first half of the show, Kevin Adams. While we were getting ready, I was setting up the cameras and you were talking to him. He mentioned that as an attorney, there's this little button on your Twitter control panel.
X.
It's called, X. It's called Grok, right?
Yeah, Grok. Yeah, I forgot to mention it.
And Kevin, see, here's the thing. If you want to know what the new XAI is going to be, get used to Grok, because I think you're going to see that become part of the infrastructure. Kevin said one of the most time-consuming things he has to do in preparing a case for court and litigation is his research of case history. And he said on Grok, he said, give me the case history on such and such. And it's like top legal scholars. I mean, it's like Supreme Court
and it's there.
Law clerk work. And it's there. And the thing I said is, Kevin, well, how do you charge those billable hours now if Grok did all the work?
The billable seconds.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, Kevin says, I don't structure my fees that way. Well, there you go.
Yeah. So that's what we're saying. So you will have on XAI, you will have Twitter with this new search with Grok. You'll be able to use X to communicate, research, you name it, banking.
Yeah.
It's a once. I mean, you never need to leave. Like right now, if I want to send a check email, I go to Google. If I want to do banking, I'll go to my bank app. Or if I want to send something, go to Cash App or Zelle, what is it? The other with a Zelle or one of those.
That's the one the banks own.
Yeah, exactly. All of those things, and you don't have to do that anymore. You sit there on the one thing and you just click here, and you're in the same app, in the same system. And he I mean, think about this. Are we sure he's not the Antichrist? I'm sure people have postulated that before. He owns the satellites. He's got satellites all over the world, around the world. Okay.
He's been sending them up every 3 days.
Every 3 days, he's got satellites. Every corner of the world. He's over Russia. He's over Africa. He's over Western Europe, Eastern Europe, India, China. He's got satellites. So he's got communication with every part of the world. Okay. And so it's like nothing we've ever seen or heard before. This is Elon Musk.
Eddie, remember what we said about the EU trying to shut down these social media and fine them and everything? If Elon owns one of the biggest networks of data communications, what would happen if he shut down Europe's?
Well, I don't think he doesn't have to. I think it's more, he's not about shutting down. He's the opposite.
No, I understand that, but he would have the power hanging over them. You don't mess with me or your country goes dark.
Well, see, I see it as the opposite. See, what I see happening is if Europe shuts, let's say they try to shut down things over Europe, but he has the satellites to where if you're living in England, Germany, France, wherever, you just switch and you can get it through one of his satellites from the US. You can get it from Italy, Spain,
Right. And that's why preppers believe in the satellite phones,
right?
Not the cell tower phones.
Right, exactly.
Remember,
and cell towers are going down everywhere. Well, ours are T-Mobile. Now the T in T-Mobile stands for telecom.
Yeah,
it's Deutsche Telekom.
Yeah,
it's a German company.
It's evil.
Yeah, yeah, das Deutsche Telekom.
You saw that arm go up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Back.
It's like Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah. Okay.
Ich will nicht mein Arm.
I saw that clip a couple weeks ago.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, Peter Sellers playing the German scientist.
It keeps going up. Yeah. It's hilarious.
Oh, that was
Jewish
crazy
comedy.
That was a crazy movie. Yeah. That's when comedy used to be funny.
Yes.
Even when it was serious.
So, okay. So, yeah, I'm just saying he has the power to shut them down. Remember, Facebook was never allowed in China. Instead, China made something, I think it's called VK or something like that.
Their own.
Yeah, their own, which, it was so funny because my cousin was over there doing some missionary. Well, it's not missionary. It was kind of like Peace Corps stuff. This is the same guy that was legislative director for congressman. Anyway, he said, so excited to be back in Vietnam where I can use Facebook again.
Vietnam, that is weird.
Yeah, he says Vietnam is much more free than China.
That's so weird.
Yes.
But see, that's the thing. See, it will make it very difficult for these countries to be able to shut anything down.
Yeah.
Because, for example, Starlink. Okay, he put Starlink up over Ukraine. Say, oh, you poor people in Ukraine, you don't have any communication. So I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to give you this free communication system called Starlink over your country. Oh, thank you, Elon. Thank you, Elon. Venezuela, Brazil, you name it.
Yeah.
I'm giving you my free thing, right?
Right.
The problem is once it's up there, it's there and you can't shut it down. Right.
Remember the case Eileen Gonzalez during the Clinton administration?
Yeah.
When federal SWAT teams came in to confiscate that boy, with all his Cuban,
right,
relatives, I'd say Cuban, refugees from Cuba. And that the first thing they did was shut down the cell towers. They can't shut down the satellites.
No.
It's an interesting thing. And this is the thing, it's fighting against totalitarian big state tyranny. Because that's what I think that was. Even though part of me thinks that there was a good case to be made that his father should have custodial rights.
Yeah. So anyway, for those of you that are savvy investors, in other words, if you got a net worth over over $1 million, that's your net worth, or if you've got $500,000 invested or in banks, in cash that's accessible, you're considered a savvy investor. I don't know what
You're
makes you
qualified for this. The Newsmax public offering is coming up. Prior to this, anybody who met that criterion got certified.
right.
They were the only ones allowed to buy shares,
Right.
stock.
But if you're not there, you can still do it by investing in certain funds with a $500 minimum in a closed-end fund.
That's kind of like a mutual fund.
Yeah, mutual fund where the
fund buys the stock.
The fund buys the stock, and it will be investing in XAI.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, if you want information, just look up investing in XAI or contact us, and I will send you the info. Okay?
Hey, I've got a comment on something here.
Yeah.
Your first point is stock market. What's happening with it? To some degree, I almost think the stock market's become another Bitcoin. It's speculative. I'm looking at...
It's always been speculative.
Yes, it is. But it's been not as radical, in value, because you actually had hard assets backing it up.
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin is a virtual coin. There's no gold backing it up or anything. I look at where was the stock market, say, last June, July, let's say Memorial Day. It was at 38,000 and change. Now it's at 41 and change. So
that's not that big.
It's
come back.
It's risen 10%.
Right, but it was at about 45.
I understand that. But what I'm saying, I'm comparing dip to dip.
Okay.
Because what often a dip is called is a correction.
Right.
Okay. In other words, yeah, it went higher, but this is its true trusted value.
Right. But if you think about it, to go from 38 and now it's at 41 in almost a year, that's not really a correction.
Because we've not that's actually a 10% rise.
Right, exactly.
Which is a good investment.
Which is not a fall. Exactly.
You can't get CD rates that good.
Right. Exactly.
So I'm just saying, I don't think the stock market's even worth 40,000. The Dow index, which is what everybody goes by.
Yeah, but see, you know how many stocks make up?
I think it's 500. In the Dow?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'm thinking S&P is something. One of them is 500.
Right. It's the S&P 500.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Dow is, what is it? It's 30, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 30 prominent. What was called the Dow Jones Industrials when we were kids.
Right. The Dow. Right. So basically, you've got like 30 stocks. It's 30 or 50. I'm pretty sure it's 30 down.
Yeah,
there.
it does. Yeah,
it's 30.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got 30 stocks that is a sample from every industry. Okay. You've got insurance, oil, banks.
That's why they're not called industrials anymore.
Right. Because it's expanded. So you got these 30 that are supposed to be a sample. Mm-hmm. So that's why when they look at the Dow and they put it up there, you'll still see certain stocks within the Dow that are going up.
Yeah.
While those 30 might be going down, but you will have some. They'll say Dow winners. If you ever, the best thing to do is watch Fox Business. You'll get it. You have the Dow winners, and then you'll have the Dow losers. Okay, then you've got the NASDAQ, and then the NASDAQ is where a lot of your
tech companies.
Right. And I think NASDAQ is 100. I think 100, and then the S&P 500, which has a bigger basket of stocks in it. Okay. And so but those are still just a sample. And then you have smaller indexes where they have samples of stocks, small cap stocks and and you have real estate indexes and specific ones,
You know who they have? One insurance company.
Travelers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would not have suspected Travelers to get that.
But see, that's every insurance company that ends up in the Dow is doomed.
Okay.
No, seriously.
It's like making the cover of Sports Illustrated.
That's funny. No, because see, Allstate was the Dow insurance company for many years.
Yeah.
And then they almost went bankrupt.
Well, weren't they part of Sears? Sears?
No, Sears bought them when they almost went under.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they broke away because Sears went under. And
Well, remember, you used to be able to find an Allstate.
Oh yeah, yeah. They
Sears
just
store,
right.
But that was a marketing agreement,
Right.
I guess.
But here's why I tell you what is okay. When you go into the Dow or any of these, okay, a stock company, you have to show a profit every quarter, and they report on your profits. And these people that are investing in you want to see a profit every quarter.
Yes, they do.
Whereas an insurance company, you're not going to have the big profit every quarter. You just can't. And then if you have tornadoes, hail claims,
it's
hurricanes,
a seasonal thing.
right? And then, and when business is good and you're getting all of these clients more and more, well, your loss ratios go up, and then your profits go down.
Yeah.
And when your profits go down, your earnings go down, and et cetera, et cetera. And then all of a sudden you start slowing down, and you're not. So I predict Travelers will be the Dow company for a while, and then they'll not, because Allstate, ever since they've come off of the Dow, they've been able to regroup, and they're starting to become strong again. But it's good to be on the Dow for a while, but they don't.
Right. But, 7 of those 30 are not, they're traded on NASDAQ, not the New York Stock Exchange. 7 of them.
7 of what?
Of those 30 in the Dow. The Dow 30. I won't call it Dow Industrials anymore because it's not. But yeah, Amazon is NASDAQ. Apple is NASDAQ. Cisco, which is more hardware than software and computing. Honeywell and Microsoft and NVIDIA, which is again hardware. So those are your NASDAQ representatives on it. But yeah, it's interesting.
I don't think you can be on both.
No, it shows which one they're on. I'm saying 7 of them they take from the NASDAQ exchange,
right?
In configuring the Dow 30.
No, but I've got you. Because they don't, I see. I've got you now. So I'm thinking of New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah, I think it's an improvement on the Dow, to make it.
They pull out another 30
multi-trading, arenas.
Yeah, no, I've got you.
Because NASDAQ really, they were, kind of the bad boys, right? Fine, you won't let us in. We'll start our own.
Right. You can actually invest in pure the Dow.
Yeah.
So if you want to do the Dow, you can invest just in that, or you can in the NASDAQ, you invest in what's called the QQQ, and that's the NASDAQ. And then you've got the S&P that you can invest in all the S&P stocks.
Yeah. But my point I'm getting at is the Dow, the stocks generally, if you're following the Dow 30, I just think it's more volatile than shares of corporate stocks in general. Most corporate stocks don't move much. Like utilities. Those were always a safe, you move to utilities if you're going into retirement.
Right, because they have dividends, and generally they have a nice high dividend. So it may be paying 7% a year.
Many of them have a government insured
some do.
Because the Corporation Commission basically guarantees you.
I'll tell you one that I missed the boat on. Many of us missed the boat on. That is Williams Company. Williams companies in 2003, I think, went down to 77 cents.
Well, that was Williams Communication.
No.
Okay.
It was Williams,
different thing.
WMB, Williams. Williams Communication went out of business.
Yeah, they spun it off and then it crashed.
Right. But Williams companies
Mm-hmm.
went to 77 cents.
Mm-hmm.
It's now at $55.
Wow.
So if you had bought $1,000 worth,
Mm-hmm.
okay, or let's say 1,000 shares for $770, 1,000 shares would now be worth $55,000.
Mm-hmm.
But they wouldn't be worth $55,000 because at the same time they were paying a dividend.
Mm-hmm.
Now the dividend may have been small. I don't know what the dividend now is. The dividend now is probably 3% or so,
Mm-hmm.
but it'd be 3% of $55 per share. So if you had 1,000 shares times 3% of $55, which is what, about $1.50. So it'd be 1,000 times $1.50 is what, $1,500, I guess, right? So a year you're getting an extra $1,500, and that's every year on top of
Right, and if you just roll that into
more shares.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you would have more than 1,000 shares. Let's say you might have 2,000 shares. So you might, it might be worth over $100,000 now. I mean, let's put it this way: you'd probably be rolling in cash.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just since about 2003.
Yeah.
Which is 3 or 4.
Now, I had a neighbor work for Williams. He got rolled, was at Williams Communication for a while. But then, fortunately, they brought him back on before it crashed. The thing I heard, maybe, Eddie, different, because so many hundreds of people lost their jobs here in Williams Communication.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's what was explained to me in all their pipelines. They were running all these communication wires, but they weren't state of the art. It would having a corner on the market in floppy disks. At one time, it might have made you powerful, but now it's worthless.
Well, here's what's crazy about the whole deal. Okay, they had the right idea.
Mm-hmm.
They were just early.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did, they were running the fiber optics,
Mm-hmm.
and they were running fiber optics through all of their gas lines,
Mm-hmm.
oil and gas lines. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they were outfitting the entire nation with fiber optics. The problem is it was early, and they didn't anticipate everything switching to cellular, everything going to satellite and cell versus landline, or, even now there is still a market for cyber or fiber optic lines, because they can, the fiber optic, as thick as a hair, can send just massive amounts of information through it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is still, and I think the story's not out yet, but anyway, so there's these millions of miles of fiber optic cable running all through America from what Williams did back in the day, but everything switched over to cellular and satellite.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of, but they're coming back now.
Well, yeah, you think about it. When I first moved to Tulsa, I live in Broken Arrow. For me to call Sapulpa, I got charged 13 cents a minute from the phone company just to call the other side of the metro area. Nobody pays long distance anymore. So if your business model was based on getting to charge people for long distance, you're gone. You're done.
Yeah. I remember I had a bag phone. I got one of the bag phones in my car, and I would never use it, Arlie, because it cost. My bill was $140 a month or something, and that was without using it.
Rush Limbaugh used to put cell callers at the front of the line because they're paying by the minute to be on hold.
Right.
Well, that went away.
That's right. Yeah. It's amazing how times have changed, people.
They really have. And a lot of those changes you're not really aware. But my point, Eddie, is if there is a, quote, correction that's even bigger than this, that moves them down, say, 5,000, 6,000, I won't be that surprised. I won't be happy,
right?
But I won't be surprised.
Yeah, I would be surprised because this has gone on for a while. I think there's a twofold thing happening here. One is there's a natural correction. And secondly, I think what is happening, you've got some forces out there that are trying to hurt the president.
Yeah.
The problem with that is they're getting to the point where they're starting to cut into the bone.
Yeah.
And they're going to start hurting the wrong people.
Yeah.
And you can only do that for so long. And those people that are getting hurt that have the power are going to start hurting back.
Yeah.
And so that's that. Which brings me to kind of a related point.
Good.
The attacks on Tesla.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen these attacks, the fire bombings at Tesla dealerships. In fact, there's supposed to be another protest here in Tulsa today.
I saw news reports this morning. Trump supporters are showing up en masse.
Great.
Yeah.
So it's on. But we've made, and the Tesla people, they have to watch out. There's a new sheriff in town named Pam Bondi, and Raj Patel, and they're not playing. They're going to put these people away.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have got to, we've got to be cognizant of that. And these people are nuts. I mean, did you see the latest one? I think it's a state representative in one of the states. He was keying cars. And the thing people didn't realize, this is so funny, they've been keying Teslas, damaging Teslas, and they didn't understand that Teslas have cameras.
Yes.
All around them.
Motion sensors
And cameras. And they're recording these people as they come by and key them. And so you can't get away. So they're catching these people who are coming by and vandalizing the Teslas, breaking windows, scratching them up.
I saw one, literally you could see the guy's wedding ring because on that rear side view mirror, there's a camera, and it puts his hand right by there. You count the freckles or whatever there's, and it's showing and it zooms away to where you see the whole profile of his face, body, his beer belly, everything.
Yeah, one of them, it's in Wisconsin, where he was a state rep.
Oh, yeah.
And they got him, and
it's
felony. He was at a country club. Oh yeah, it's a felony
because it's felony. Most states is 1,000 and up, and you have to do a new paint job on that, and then maybe more than that. You got to fill that, sand it out, and everything, and it's
a Tesla.
Yeah, so
it probably takes a little more, costs a little more.
Now those Tesla trucks, they are they're basically an armored vehicle. The only thing is, if you want the windows to roll down, then it's technically not, because those armored glass and that, they can't roll down. You have to choose.
I remember when Elon was doing the first demonstration ever. I don't know if you remember this video, but they showed him doing the first demonstration. He was showing how tough it is. He takes a baseball bat or a sledgehammer or something, and he hits it, and the window just shattered. And it was a failure, He was showing how tough the windows are, and he just hits it. It just glass goes everywhere. It was for everybody's. I'll never forget. That's probably 6 years ago.
He showed up with Joe Rogan, drove in with the Tesla, and Rogan gets out his elk hunting bow, compound bow, and from about 20 feet away, pulls, there's a very sharp thing. That arrow hits the door panel, bounces off, didn't even dent the door.
Yeah, so this guy in I don't know if it was in Washington State or Oregon that firebombed a whole bunch of them. There were like 3 of them. He must have really done some work to get I think he shot him with a high-powered rifle, and then he threw the Molotov cocktails inside because he had to break the windows to get it in there. But he's going away for a while. So, okay, so the Yuma County Supervisor Jonathan Lyons has told the Trump administration, he explained that the challenges facing them in the wake of the human influx of migrants into the community is still facing them. It says chaos first, and then under the Biden administration, they're facing challenges still left over from the Biden administration. See, this is these idiots on these mainstream networks, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, ABC. They're not telling anybody what's going on here. This guy is. This is the ramifications. He said chaos first, and then they were abandoned second by the Biden administration. He said that the border under the former president, Joe Biden, was just, chaos and then abandonment. And he said it's controlled under President Trump. But he says that we'd like our not-for-profit hospital to be reimbursed for $32 million in auditable costs. They're willing to be audited, but it shows that that's what it costs them due to undue burdens from the influx of migrants. In 2023, the Yuma Regional Medical Center had to deal with millions of unpaid medical costs, given the number of illegal migrants coming in for care. A food bank was also impacted. We've seen a significant impact also of fentanyl here in the community. One of my best friends just lost his oldest nephew 2 weeks ago, said the mayor, the pills are being sold for about $2.50. There needs to be serious consequences for the Chinese and for the cartels that are dealing and pushing this product in the United States. So that's what they're dealing with all along the border.
I wish I could remember the source, but one of the news stories I read this week is that China is sending all the precursors for fentanyl
the chemicals and everything there.
To the cartel.
Oh, yeah, and they're manufacturing it in Mexico.
And so it doesn't show up as fentanyl coming from China.
Right, yeah.
But at some point, we got to talk about the tariffs are coming active here as the first of the week Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. Let me cover these last two things. NPR, this is dealing with the whole deal of the whole alphabet networks. NPR buried Hunter Biden's story. And the House Doge Committee held hearings on PBS, accountable for not serving the entire public that helps pay their bills. Under a barrage of Republican questioning, NPR CEO Catherine Mayer admitted that it was a mistake for NPR to dismiss the Hunter Biden laptop story, expressed regret about the vicious anti-Trump tweets before she came to NPR, and agreed it would be disturbing if reports were true that there were no Republicans in the NPR newsroom. Now, it sounds good what she's saying, but it continued after she came on. It wasn't just before she came on. Yeah, I don't believe her.
No. I mean, you probably saw the hearings. When they went on.
I saw clips of it.
Yeah, but both of them, PBS and NPR, both of the ladies just sat there, kind of. Oh well, I'm sorry. I regret that happened. I'm sorry. And back before the election, remember they had her, and she was acting all blasé about it, like it wasn't a big deal, trying to haughty. And now all of a sudden she's caught and basically realizing she's about to lose her job, her cushy job.
Oh, yes.
And she's done. Should. Yeah, she should. Sure. Both of them.
Whatever happened to the days of Cal Thomas and great conservative thinkers that they seem to be able to tolerate back in the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, we're not asking if you're going to have a national public radio, public broadcasting system, public, that means all of the public, then you need to have all sides. The thing that's the most disturbing is there was not one Republican in the newsroom.
Yeah. You remember the early days of Big Bird and PBS, and when
Count Chocula and
the part of the reason they did not that they had public financing is they didn't do commercials.
Right.
Yeah, what a joke. They have more commercials, I think, than the other stations.
Really? I know. I never.
Well, they would say, this show's brought to you by, and yada, yada, yada.
Oh, yeah.
And you'd see that both TV and radio. And then they'd give you little buzz lines for their most recent ad campaigns.
Right.
And like, really? This isn't a commercial I'm hearing? That's garbage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so let's face it, they aren't even following the rules that were set up for nonprofit education.
And listen, the old saying, I may have been born in the morning, but I wasn't born this morning, because when you look at the lady, what? Really? Oh, well, I wasn't aware of that. Oh, come on.
Yeah, they want the best of both worlds.
She was bragging. I mean, she was bragging about the things she was doing. The PBS lady, she was, it's just, it's a joke. A joke.
Here's the thing. It should be owned by the U.S. government, who should divest it, sell it on the stock market as a commercial venture. Right.
Because it's set up already. If somebody wants to start a new make it WPBS or KPBS or something, make it you're right, because it's got some value.
Yeah,
it's got value.
Yeah, so spin it off for those people who like it, make it available, and they can buy shares in it and stocks, and they can support.
Take over the shows, make it a liberal network, make it another. Let it compete with MSNBC.
Yeah, they've actually, especially the radio side, they've had some winners. I mean, Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers. God, that was some of the best car information and comedy I've heard. There's been other shows different people like, and I think they're commercially viable and could easily be on other networks.
Yeah. I've got one more, and then we can go to you and do some local stuff. President Donald Trump continued criticism of Germany's failure to pay its defense bills. And his pushing looks like it may have pushed one of Europe's wealthiest nations into action after Trump and Rick Grenell was sent over there, and he's been pounding on him, helped to cajole the Germans out of their security slumber. Berlin reached the NATO goal of spending 2% of their GDP spending in 2024. This was the first time Berlin reached its 2% goal since 1991 at the end of the Cold War. So it's the first time they've reached it. And the likely new German Chancellor Friedrich Merz of the Conservative Christian Democrat Union, the CDU for short, said he would do whatever it takes to rebuild Germany's frail military. Berlin's mainstream parties aim to invest hundreds of billions of euros in defense and infrastructure. Germany's armed forces, the Bundeswehr, are, according to reports, in a state of disarray with a mere 181,000 troops.
Yeah.
So, Deutschland is rebuilding.
Okay, so back, I think it was in 19 or maybe it was in 20, Ted Cruz pulled a slick maneuver to get a bill passed that basically shut down that pipeline from Russia through the Baltics and into Germany. Well, as soon as Biden became president, they reversed that.
Right. And then they blew up the one that was going the other way, that was going through the Oh, you're talking about going through the Baltic.
Yeah.
Oh, where are you talking through the
Underwater
Baltic, the underwater one?
Yeah, Trump and Cruz pulled a deal to get, past the cloture vote to get that bill passed that prevented that gas line.
Right.
Or made it so expensive for Germany to pursue it.
Right. But then they had the other ones going land.
Well, the one that's been going through Ukraine, has always been there.
Right.
But,
in Poland, it went through Poland.
Right.
Right.
So, but my point here is Trump warned them, you buy Russian gas and Russia's going to own you.
Yeah.
And it was one of his predictions that definitely came true because he started pulling in all of that, resources. Because Biden took off all the sanctions and that's why.
But then he blew up the pipeline, but they were still running it across the landline, remember?
You got that one, yeah.
But what I'm saying, the one through the Baltic.
During the war, it got blown up underwater,
right,
yeah.
Which didn't make sense either, which is kind of weird thing to do. If you gave them the right to get the oil through that one, then you blow it up,
But really, Germany has as much guilt as anybody for Ukraine getting invaded, other than Putin, of course, because they bankrolled it. Mm-hmm. They bought the gas, and then Biden, the idiot, I'll say Biden because he should should own it, but his people, the dark forces that really did run the country during the Biden years, they put an export ban on our natural gas going to Europe.
Right, which is, I still can't figure some of the decisions they made make no sense.
No, it makes sense if you see it as a conspiracy to destroy the United States.
Right, yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm saying. So who and why, unless they're enriching themselves at the top and don't care about us, and
they're getting paid off
and are pushing for a one world government that's run by people outside the U.S. in conjunction with certain individuals in the U.S. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, we're facing
what is it? The one world government or the
the
WEC,
globalists?
The WEC. Yeah.
But you actually have two enemies if you're Trump's America. Russia is potential, but I don't buy the line that Russia is as aggressive as the globalists are making them out.
No, I think Russia is as afraid of the globalists as we should be, and that Russia, in one sense, are our allies.
Yeah, I want to give you a comparison here. What do you think of Trump saying about Panama? We should just take it back.
Yeah, in a sense, I do, but can we?
Well, whether we can or not, do you feel morally justified?
I don't know if I feel morally justified. What I do feel morally justified in is asserting our access to it.
Okay.
That's the real issue. It doesn't really matter who owns it as long as they leave it open.
Yeah. Okay. I consider that somewhat the non-aggression Ron Paul policy. Is that? But I say there's not a whole lot of difference in principle between us taking back Panama and Russia taking back Ukraine.
No. Oh, no, I agree.
Because once you see a former asset of yours being used as a resource to attack you or to undermine you, Ukraine going NATO, in Putin's mind, that is a huge threat. That is nuclear silos on Cuba in 1962.
I agree. And to be honest, my big thing is Putin has not shown a clear interest in all of Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
He just wants the Donbass.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying, I am going to protect our waterways.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't really care about, northern Ukraine or Western Ukraine.
Yeah.
Because that's like Hungary, you can have people in Hungary and Poland, et cetera. But when you've got NATO troops and ships going up and down the Black and Caspian Sea, which are right on your border.
Well, Black Sea, Caspian's landlocked.
Yeah. I don't know. Caspian, I think you do have access.
It's way off to the east, and it's pretty much like a Dead Sea.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It does not flow.
Say the Black Sea.
Yeah.
All right. Then, but let's say then, but that entry from the Mediterranean all the way up through the Black Sea, you can't have that. That's the Cuba thing.
Well, and really,
in fact, it'd be like letting them have Florida and the Carolinas.
To your point on that, what did we have to give up in '62? Is our silos in Turkey, which is on the Black Sea.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's legit.
It's legit. I agree.
The one agreement that I did hear this week, don't know if it played out completely, but Ukraine and Russia did agree on a ceasefire on the Black Sea. That's important for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, we were talking a few weeks ago, a British cargo ship coming into Odessa got blown up, and it said it had weapons on it.
Yeah, and see, the reason too why they would want a ceasefire on the Black Sea is because those cities along there are predominantly Russian anyway.
Yeah. Except way down Odessa's.
Odessa, yeah.
But Odessa's still under Ukrainian control.
Exactly, and Odessa is also on the border of what's under there? Is it Turkey? Are they or Romania? What's?
It's Albania, I think.
Is it Albania? Yeah, whatever.
Romania,
right? But it's far enough. It's not a real threat. It's not right on the border of Russia or anything.
Yeah.
So it makes somewhat sense.
Yeah, but it is an imperative to Ukraine, who's landlocked on the west, to have the seaports.
Right, they can still have their seaport.
That's all they got for seaports.
And the big thing about Odessa is it's the Miami Beach of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. That's where all of the millionaires and the big wig communists used to go for their vacation.
It's the only beach you got, man. Yeah. Live it up. I do want to say this. See, the thing you and I were talking about after Trump got elected, what would be, in simplified terms, how a peace deal can work out? I had said some kind of autonomy for the Donbass or something, or a right to choose.
Right.
What do you want to be a part of?
Right. Exactly.
If we saw a true glasnost, to use a Gorbachev term, openness and, something that looked to us to be like, okay, this is self-determination. Mm-hmm. I don't think we would have a problem with, Russia having areas like that.
Right.
Because if culturally the people identify, hey, we're Russians,
Right. Here's what I know, this is a pipe dream or whatever, but if they would say, Russia would say, we want the Donbass, we don't want Odessa, everything to the west of the Donbass there, you can have it, and we will help you rebuild all the territories bombed out, blown away, whatever, if you want our help. Mm-hmm. Now it's in their court. Mm-hmm. Okay. We're going to leave Odessa alone. You leave us alone. But we will send you money. We'll send you help, whatever. But this is our offer.
Yeah.
We're willing to cease fire. We're willing to not surrender, but call it over. And we will help you rebuild. You just leave us alone. We're going to rebuild the Donbass. Let your people, if they want to stay, they can stay. If they want to go move back west, they're welcome to do that. but this is our offer, and we offer peace. That's what I think should be offered. And so, but you're going to get some stubborn ones that don't want it for whatever reason. I don't know what.
There'll always be a PLO in every war.
Or a PILL.
No, we're going to stay in this refugee camp, and you guys, come on.
Fight on while we stay. Yeah, that's true. But
meanwhile,
honestly, I don't know how many people are still in the Donbass, that really want to fight on. That's another question.
It's not much of a prize at this
point. No. So, let's just call it a war and end it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, OU spring football. What's going on there with the new quarterback and the new coach?
I'm not up on that.
Yeah, I'm wondering what's going on too. You don't seem to hear a whole lot with not draft choices, but what do you call them? Portal transfers.
Yeah,
I'm wondering how that's going. What the season's going to look like.
Yeah,
I think this is Venable's last stand here. If he doesn't finish top four, at least top three, I would probably say he's gone.
Well, he's fighting now in the new SEC, which good luck. It's just, I don't know why.
Whose idea was that to move?
It was the AD, and part of the deal is it had to be Texas and OU.
You think it was more money?
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
But Venables, at the time this was negotiated, Venables was defensive coordinator at Clemson.
Yeah.
Okay, so Venables didn't have any. He accepted it on these terms.
Right. Oh,
yeah, and I don't think Lincoln Riley was all that big of a cheerleader for it, because the first thing he did was bail out.
Oh, no, I know. He didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And people are mad at him because he didn't say anything. But what are you going to say when the regents and
Eddie, that's
AD?
how employees get fired. When they badmouth their boss's decision.
Yeah, and then everybody's upset because he bails and didn't say anything.
It's like being upset with Brett Favre for going to the Vikings after you kicked him off your own team, Green Bay. Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing, and that, again, you guys probably know by now that I'm ticked off at OU for that reason, because they tend to do stuff like that. I was ticked off at Texas Tech for years because of what they did to Mike Leach. Pulled the same kind of crap, withheld his bonus he was supposed to get because they fired him a day before he was supposed to take him to this bowl game. They're leaving the next day, and they fire him the day before and then say, oh, no, part of your contract said you had to get him to the bowl game, and we're firing you now. You didn't get him to the bowl game. Stupid stuff like that. And then the team languished and suffered for many years until, now we've got a coach that everybody likes and we're rebuilding. But everybody was just so mad at the team, and now.
Well, wasn't it Craig James' kid that started all this?
Yeah, it was Craig James' kid. In retrospect, we find
brat.
Well, and then they get this, and then with Texas Tech, much worse than the OU situation. They have a rule in Texas that you can't sue the school for breach of contract, because you can't sue the state government. There's a law you can't sue the government, and so because the school is a state school, it comes under state government, so they wouldn't let Leach sue the school.
Yeah, and that's got to get corrected, because when the government is involved in commerce, it should follow the same rules everybody else in commerce.
Yeah. But they wouldn't let him do it.
No.
He tried to fight it all the way, but the state Supreme Court said, nope, you can't.
We were supposed to have John Eccles in today. Now, other than being floor leader for several years and now running for AG, he is the medical contractor for the Tulsa jail. And most of the jails in Oklahoma. He just got a ruling from the Supreme Court saying he's immune from lawsuits because he is working in the stead of the sheriff's in-house team. You can't sue the jail because they didn't pull your tooth on time, things like that.
Well, then how is it that the Williams kid, when he died, they were able to sue the jail on that?
It's a good point. I'm just saying that ruling just came down.
No,
today.
I know. I was just curious that they were able to sue them. That's
well, you know what?
I'm supposed his son may be here any minute now. He was supposed to be coming in. I guess I could ask Kevin. Although it's kind of funny. Well, I won't go in there.
I'll say that's maybe an argument that our sheriff's office failed to make and should have.
Mm-hmm.
Because that cost us. I was talking to Vic Regalado the other day about it. He said, yeah, it was $10 million that had to come out of our sinking fund from the county to pay off. And listen, Elliott Williams, that was a righteous verdict.
Oh, no. I'm not making a judgment on the verdict or not. I'm making a judgment on why was that allowed, but
because nobody successfully argued the point. It was argued here this last week. The Supreme Court ruled that it was that immunity that's given to the sheriff is by extension given to those contractors he hires under him. Because it's the sheriff's responsible. Even though
we need to get Vic in here.
Now, what did happen in that, as soon as that jury said, yeah, 10 million, Vic Regalado, then our new sheriff, because it wasn't anything Vic did wrong.
Right. Oh, no. I know.
He said, we are going to sue Armor on this. And I asked him follow up just a few months ago. I said, what happened on that? He says, yeah, the case never, materialized. But really, that was Armor screwing up.
Wow. Yeah.
I know it's two things, because if a detention officer doesn't notify the medical services, then it's on the detention officers, which are the jailers.
Yeah, that's true. But still, the principle, the main principle is you can sue here, but you can't sue here. It doesn't make sense.
Well, and I think that ought to have an exception for if it was maliciously done. If you can show malicious intent, then you have a crime, not a tort suit.
Okay, possibly.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, we better wrap up. We're
yeah.
We're running
so anyway,
what do you have? You have anything else?
No, I wanted to go over those couple of things: the stock market and
yeah. Hey, so stock market wise, if you're smart, if you're not in the market, this may be an opportunity coming very soon.
We have one thing. I said it was the tariffs coming in.
Oh, okay.
We got to mention that. For instance, car makers that get their parts from overseas, those will be subjected to tariffs, even if they're assembled in the United States. So,
well, yeah, because the parts are still foreign parts, and we're paying them tariffs to bring them in.
Right.
So, right.
Yeah. So, and if you're talking a 25% tariff, now I think they said automobiles are going to back it down something like 15%. Was the last I heard. I don't know. This is such a moving target, this whole story.
But we'll see. Well, here's the other side of it. Okay. If anybody can have faith in what I see happening, it's going to create new opportunities here in America. We're going to start making parts in America again. You're going to see American-made GM parts, American-made Ford parts, American-made Hyundai, Honda, you name it. All these companies are going to start building everything, not just the cars and shipping their parts in. They're going to start building, and then what will happen? The overseas manufacturers or their countries will start dropping their tariffs, and that's what's going to happen. They're going to have to, because if all of a sudden they may play hardball for a little bit, but as soon as they see that we can do it here, and maybe not only can we do it, but we can do it better, because I know American workers compared to European workers, and trust me, your American workers work harder. Okay. Just trust me. I know we're known to have some lazy workers and all, but no, Europeans are just as lazy, if not lazier than
the productivity indexes always show the United States very much at the top.
So once that starts hitting, you're going to see it. And then at that point, we will allow foreigners see something. This will bleed into another issue, the immigrant situation. Okay. We will then be able to, and this is what I've proposed all along. We tell the immigrant, you go back to your country. We will have immigration offices set up. And if you have a job, a skill, you've been working, you show that you're productive, you get a letter from here stating that fact. You go back to your country, show that you're productive, this and this. We then give you a visa. You come back and you can breathe easy. You're not afraid of immigration, and you have a full right with green paper, a green card, and papers that make you legally a citizen. Yeah,
the self-deportation app is a brilliant move, because you basically get amnesty.
Yeah.
And the thing that you benefit from is when they start choosing who they're going to let in, people who already have a network of resources, relatives, housing, all those things, because, hey, I've lived in Broken Arrow for the last 8 years, right? Now I'm going back to Monterey, but I'm going to do it the right way here. And the landlord already knows me, says, I got a house coming up vacant.
Right.
You have all those things that, and you're, a member of, St. Margaret's Parish and or St. Bernard's or whatever.
Hilty needs me. I've been working at Hilty.
Exactly. Or Kleinco, or any of these. So I thought that was a brilliant thing.
Yeah.
And now Trump said, remember the gold green card or whatever they got, the gold card, you have to pay $1 million for that. They already had like 5,000 people took the deal.
There's a whole lot of millionaires.
Okay. That's $5 billion came in that Biden was giving away for free.
Yeah.
So that's brilliant, because if you got the resources to pay $1 million for that, you're probably not going to be on food stamps.
Right.
And that's good.
Yeah.
You're not going to be hitting the Yuma hospital for free healthcare.
Right.
So I think that's smart.
Yeah. We need to find ways of turning this around and doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And here's the thing too. And I've always said this, see, the aid we're giving to these foreign countries, we need to make it aid to the countries, not to the dictators who run the countries.
Yep.
And we don't have, like, USAID. What USAID should have is offices that monitor that the money, food, aid, whatever is sent reaches the end destination, the individuals. That, in other words, if $1 million goes in, $1 million reaches the citizens, whether it's medically, food-wise, or rent, whatever, clothing, whatever we're doing, children, it gets there. It does not stop at some bureaucrat's office so he can drive a Mercedes or a BMW.
Yeah, you know what?
And have a villa.
Yeah.
That's where the problem is.
Yeah, Glasnost in Romania in the 80s under that Soviet dictator, communist dictator.
Ceausescu.
Yes. His openness, or Glasnost, was to accept Bibles in. And they stocked all of their fancy bathrooms with toilet paper.
Which were Bible pages.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Okay. So this is the thing. Don't give it to the dictator.
No.
Find the people who need it, or work through private sectors, things like Red Cross or other things like that.
Right.
But I just want to say, to wrap up this tariff thing, we got to be careful now that we see tariffs only as a vehicle to bring about fair trade.
Right. Exactly.
Because it should not, if another country is not tariffing our goods, we should not be tariffing their
Oh,
goods.
and I guarantee you Trump's not doing that. I
Yeah.
guarantee you. They made, MSNBC and some of these idiots, like The View, they may try to portray it as that. But I guarantee you that's not what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's smarter than that.
It's going to hurt India really bad.
Yeah, well, then India needs to quit tariffing.
Yeah, they're doing like 100% tariff on our Cadillacs.
Yeah, well, then quit driving Cadillacs.
Right. Yeah. But they don't make Cadillacs.
Well, yeah.
The vehicles they make are trash.
Right. So,
but
you
they
want a
make a
Cadillac?
lot of textiles.
Right.
And what are you going to tariff? Whatever they're shipping here. Right. Because not everybody makes every product.
Right.
But if you're going to have compensatory tariffs, it shouldn't be, item by item. It'd be, okay, here's what you do to our goods. Here's what we're doing to all of your goods.
Well, but if you're, we need to find out what quantity or what proportion of Cadillacs it is. And then we do say 25% on the textiles. Because, the same thing was going on in Germany. We were importing, we used to get our t-shirts for the concerts when we would do our Petra or whatever. We would bring in Indian t-shirts.
Yeah, they had cheap textiles.
Oh yeah, and but we had to pay. We always had to pay a tariff on that.
Okay,
a tax in Germany.
Yeah, that's the thing. Especially, 15%. You've been watching, bringing on cable TV these Canadians arguing against Trump, and they never argue the point that they're charging us a tariff.
Oh yeah, sure.
They just think it's terrible that we're charging.
Right, but they never mention the fact that they're charging us a tariff. Right, it's fair for them to do it.
And boy, they are slick at changing the argument to something else.
Well, it's because they figure that our people aren't paying attention, or their people aren't paying attention.
Yeah,
and that's how the world is today. It's not about fairness. It's about what we can do to you without getting caught. That's what it is.
Hey, show notes. I know we got to wrap. John Eccles, we're trying to reschedule him. And then Mike Macy's reached out to us. He's a candidate for governor. And I think, Eddie, you and I agree, the Republican candidates, if we're accepting one in, we want to offer to all of them. Like, for instance, Macy's come in. Hey, Gettner, come on in. Gettner and I have visited before. I think we get along great. John O'Connor, you're looking at running for AG again. You were appointed to finish a term. Love to have him.
As Revelation says, whosoever will may come.
There you go. Yeah.
Hey, everybody, thank you. It's been a long one. And we want to thank our special guest. Dave in his cleaning up took away
Kevin Adams
took away all the books again.
I know you did. No, you put it right there.
Well, you have two more on the counter here.
That's your copy. This is mine.
Yes.
Thank you for the copy.
Yeah. All
Definitely
right.
plan to read.
God bless everybody. Have a great week, and we look forward to speaking with you again next week. Take care.